Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Select Committee on School Facilities. We probably better get started. The clock says we need to. Let's take roll to get started this morning.
Sure
Ashley,
thing,
thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman. Select Committee on School Facilities. May 19th. Representative Bratton. Nope.
Here.
You are logged in twice and one of your mics is on.
Let me try to turn that.
How about now? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Senator Dockstader. Senator Love.
Excused.
Senator McEwen.
Excused.
Senator Rothfuss.
Here.
Representative Bratton.
She excused. She's on screen, I mean.
Representative Geringer.
Here.
Representative Heft. Representative Provenza.
Here.
Vice Chair Angelos.
Here.
Chairman Landon.
And I'm here.
You have a quorum.
It sounded like Yankee Stadium and Joe DiMaggio there for a minute there, but we got it under control. So, committee, I would entertain a motion. I know you've read every word of the minutes from our last meeting, but I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Senator Dockstader, seconded by Representative Geringer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, we've got that stuff out of the way. And Madam Vice Chairman, I want to give you an opportunity for any comments you have before we get going on the day.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hosting. And I think we're just excited to get digging in. It's been a little while since we were with Select School Facilities. And I know some people are here in person and some people are here on the interwebs. And we welcome all. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, so I think one of our representatives who is on screen, good morning, Representative. Good to see you. You're not actually in Sheridan County. You're off across the world a little ways, but thank you for taking the time to zoom in, and it's good to see everyone. So committee, we haven't really had much time since the session. You may have had an opportunity to see where we were approved for certain topics, and we will launch into those today. That's part of what we do on this committee. There's a lot of educational time. These statutes date back to obviously to the beginning of this select committee, and Senator Rothfuss, Senator Dockstader, and I have been around the block a little bit, and we've seen these statutes come about. But we find ourselves in kind of an interesting time, and I think it's a fun time to be on this committee because we've done things over the last 5 years that have changed the landscape. It's put challenges in front of our commission. It's put challenges in front of this committee and in front of the legislature in general. So what exactly are the ramifications for everything that we have implemented over the last couple of years? What's that going to do to our physical plants out across these school districts? We have the challenges that the vice chairman has brought up before, which is Mother Nature. And that is that we're not having as many kids these days. And so our enrollments are down. So much to talk about from a policy standpoint, and that's what we're going to start doing today. I hope it'll be a great learning experience for all of us. Any comments from members of the committee before we get started? Senator Dockstader, it's always good to see you from the Western Rangelands. Yeah. All righty. Let's launch right in and school facilities end of session summary. Always one of the best parts of the spring is for Tanya and Matt both and the staff to remind us what we did. What did we do? Because we don't remember, Matt. Mr. Wilmarth, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Matt Wilmarth, LSO. Happy to be here this morning and kind of refresh your memories on what you all did this past session. So we'll just kind of dive right into that. This was the 2026 budget session, which forwarded the majority of your biennial appropriations for K-12 school capital construction, major maintenance, and the operations of the State Construction Department and School Facilities Commission. What I will first touch on is the appropriations contained in original House Bill 105 or Wyoming Session Laws, Chapter 39. And this is the majority of the funding allocated for purposes of major maintenance and capital construction. In total, $393.7 million was appropriated out of this piece of legislation for the 2027-28 biennium for K-12 capital construction and major maintenance projects. Of that amount, 39.5 million was made effective immediately for component level projects and a few other capital construction and ancillary projects, and some major maintenance to finalize the final payments for the 2025-26 biennium. The balance of the appropriation, 354.2 million, was appropriated for the 27-28 biennium, and that's the majority of the funding and the purpose of that bill. Of that total $393.7 million, $237.9 million was for major maintenance, and then the balance, $155.85 million, was for capital construction projects. Those are your component level major maintenance projects, charter school leases, other modular building leases, design, construction, safety and security, and any other kind of demolition projects or unanticipated costs for those projects. One unique thing about this piece of legislation was that the major maintenance was included in this bill rather than the standard budget bill and the operations budget of the State Construction Department. Traditionally, that's been allocated through the budget bill and Agency 27's budget. This was just a unique appropriation for this biennium to fund the full amount in that piece of legislation. It doesn't change the intent of the appropriation or anything related to that. But that's just one interesting piece. As you opened up your meeting, you said, hey, we haven't met, and you approved the minutes from the October meeting. And really, from that October meeting, you did forward and fund that recommendation that this committee made to the governor and the Joint Appropriations Committee. As you recall, you're required to make a recommendation every year by November 1st, and it was basically intact. There were two minor adjustments. One was the legislature appropriated another $2,650,000 to supplement prior appropriations for the Campbell County School District #1 transportation facility. And then there was a minor net to zero change in the State Construction Department's budget, a $78,000 change from general fund to school foundation program funds. That was the only change at the end of the session from your recommendations. Now, there were changes at the beginning and during and so forth, but as it sits as the final piece of legislation, that recommendation from this committee back in October basically stood the test. So,
Actually, I was just thinking the same thing. Doesn't matter who gets the credit and whatever. It was a little bit different, was it not, Mr. Wilmarth? The Appropriations Committee does not always gather up our materials and draft a new bill and take it, but you know what? Go for it. And it worked, right? I can't remember a time that we actually went through the Appropriations Committee with the school facilities appropriations, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that. This is a pretty clean budget in terms of from your recommendations to the final product. It did have some minor changes along the way, but the ending product was pretty comparable. I will say, and you just hit on it a little bit, you as a committee did sponsor a separate piece of legislation that forwarded this budget. that was not enacted in law. This bill that was enacted in law was actually sponsored by the Joint Appropriations Committee. As at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who sponsors the legislation. But I just wanted to touch on that. So any questions on kind of the larger appropriations for, that's kind of the first bullet, the first bill, chapter 39.
Any questions, committee, so far? I think, I appreciate you breaking that out, the major maintenance piece. We've worked very hard in this committee, and of course, the appropriations folks and others have jumped into the fray and helped. So that's reflective of a little bit more budgeted amount in terms of major maintenance, but that's a little bit higher on the construction side as far as average, is it not? Mr. Wilmarth, 155 million for a biennium. That's a little bit more than the past two bienniums, but
Mr. Chairman, it's about the same as your 23-24. 25, the 25-26 biennium was a substantial amount. It was about 528.6 million. So your 25-26 biennium appropriations, I would say, are an outlier of your historical appropriations. The 155 million that you have for this budget is about, I think, our estimate from an LSO perspective on a biennial amount. I think what that budget is for this next biennium, or the 27-28 biennium, is about what we've projected as a standard biennial budget. The 25-26 biennium.
so the blip
is
was
an
really
outlier.
25, 26. This one brings us back into range that we become accustomed to, kind of.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And I will say, recall, why is that 25-26 biennial budget so large? You have two substantial high school construction projects. One is in Sweetwater County School District number 1 in Rock Springs, and then your Campbell County School District number 1, Campbell County High School project, along with their transportation facility. So those are kind of the two larger projects that kind of are an outlier. And then you have two larger elementary school projects in Laramie County School District number 1 as well. So that is primarily the reason for those or that large appropriation in the current biennium.
Just from a historical standpoint, committee, every one of those things that were just referenced by Mr. Wilmarth was on the radar screen. We've known for a long time. Laramie 1 has needed our help for quite some time. Campbell County kind of snuck in there. I'm kidding. But honestly, we've known all along that we had some things, and we knew that they were going to be sizable. And so I'm proud of the legislature for stepping up and getting the work done. So go ahead, Mr. Wilmarth. Anything else, committee? Okay.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, along that line of questioning, if the committee or anybody wants to look at the historical appropriations, this kind of gives me a plug on one of the points I had at the beginning of the memo. If you go to the LSO website and you go to state finances, you go down to the menu at the very bottom, there's a data visualization link. Click on the school finance tab, go to slide 9. There is a historical analysis or figure visualization that illustrates historical K-12 capital construction appropriations from the legislature all the way back to the 1999-2000 biennium, when the state kind of took responsibility of funding K-12 capital construction. And it's broken out by category. So major maintenance, capital construction, state construction department operations funding. And you can see the ebbs and flows and see what those costs or appropriations have been historically. So the next slide, slide 10, shows historical, just major maintenance funding by school district. So if you're wanting to know your school district's historical major maintenance appropriations, you can look at that. So just wanted to plug some of that information if people are wondering on where can I find historical appropriations. That's where you can go.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Wilmarth. Thank you for reminding us that information is all there. it's kind of interesting when you look at a district by district 30,000-foot view. It kind of follows. It's remarkable how close it follows how many students are in those districts. You know, you expect Laramie 1, Natrona, Campbell, and it just goes right on down. And and that's reflective of the 25 years of work or whatever. It's pretty fascinating. So appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Wilmar. Keep going.
You bet, Mr. Chairman. The next piece of legislation that was enacted into law is what I just kind of alluded to was the budget bill, or Chapter 44, General Government Appropriations. This was original Senate File 1. The State Construction Department was appropriated in total from that bill $10.43 million from the School Foundation Program account, consisting of $8.5 million for its operations budget, and then $1.9 million for its engineering and technical budget. Additionally, and we don't have an amount yet, there is Section 329, the employee compensation section. There will be a like amount appropriated from the School Foundation Program account to award employee compensation increases for those staff that are paid from the School Foundation Program account. So I don't have an amount on that just quite yet, but once it is, the LSO will profile that in October fiscal profile. So we'll identify that for you. But just wanted to point that as well. Just remind the committee, you did award employee compensation increases to the state employees. And I already mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. There was just a minor technical correction from the Joint Appropriations Committee on some net to zero fund, different changes for the general fund of the SFP for the State Construction Department's operations budget of an amount of $78,921. Any questions on the budget bill and the appropriations, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions? Madam Vice Chair, anything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
The next bill I'll touch on is Wyoming Session Laws, Chapter 65, School Facilities Use Fees. This was original 2026 Senate File 90, sponsored by Senator Brennan. This bill provides that rental fees for any school district for the use of school district property cannot exceed the hourly rate of personnel, equipment, utility, and supply costs actually incurred by the district for the use of the property. This is kind of a relic of about 3 sessions that the legislature has kind of taken a stab at this. And so this bill has now been enacted in law beginning July 1 of 2026. And importantly, it doesn't modify any contract or agreement that's been in effect before that. But effective July 1, 2026, districts will have to establish those fees based upon those actual costs related to those categories.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmer. That was quite a good effort, I thought, by the senator. Many of us were persuaded to support that, even though it really does create some questions on behalf of our districts, I would think. I look forward to hearing anything that they have to say about that. I'm kind of, I used to do this for a living, albeit at the college level. And it's hard to express how much stress is on those facilities. You can't believe, how many requests are out there. And you could run them 24 hours a day if you had the ability to do so. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I think we all know the purpose of the bill. And so we'll see. Yeah. Anything, committee? Okay, please proceed, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The final bill, just a small one that I think the committee or the legislature discussed was Chapter 82, which is original Senate File 81. This is the K-12 public school finance recalibration bill. This recalibrated the education resource block grant model. For purposes of this committee, the routine maintenance formula really did not change. Overall, the estimated funding for the components of custodians, maintenance workers, groundskeepers, supplies, materials increased by about $707,600. That's primarily in the salary piece. One other piece is the utility funding was recalibrated to school district actual expenditures incurred from fiscal year 2025 or school year 2024-25. The one caveat I will note on here is the analysis on the numbers excludes anything related to health insurance and retirement. And the reason for that is those are recalibrated to be allocated outside of the funding model of the block grant. And just kind of give you a little insight into that. The retirement funding will be reimbursed fully for those actual costs on their employees for the employer share of 15.191% rather than allocated all the way through the block grant. And then health insurance is also going to be allocated on outside of the block grant for those employees actually participating in the school district health insurance plans up to the state employee or employer premium amount for state employees. And so I just wanted to just indicate that the analysis of the 707,600 excludes anything related to health insurance or retirement. One other piece, and this is an important piece in this piece of legislation, and this goes back to our discussion last May. You may remember early discussions in the interim related to use of a school foundation program dollars or block grant dollars for purposes of capital construction or major maintenance. And LSO provided a memo on historical uses of those dollars for school district capital construction or major maintenance purposes. This bill, the recalibration bill, chapter 82, effective July 1 of this year, districts will be prohibited from using any of those block grant dollars, school foundation program funds for purposes of major maintenance or capital construction projects. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that. The committee, this committee, while they received the information, didn't take any action on that, but the recalibration committee did take an affirmative action on that piece. So just wanted to highlight that as kind of as an important piece going forward.
So, Mr. Wilmore, thanks for all your efforts to serve as our analyst on this front. And the committee, I'm sure that every one of you have probably been approached by someone with regard to the ramifications of the recalibration process. It's rolling out pretty hot and heavy in this community. And I would just remind that Matt is a great resource. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate, I think, to get a hold of Matt because he knows the information, pretty well. So please proceed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll just finish up the last piece of this memorandum. It just highlights the two bills that the committee sponsored, but did not get enacted in law. I already touched on the first one, Senate File 60, which was the committee's sponsored bill related to the appropriations. That was essentially enacted into law just through the joint appropriations bill. The second bill was Senate File 37, K-12 school facilities maintenance and appropriations. This bill, and I think we'll discuss it later this afternoon, relates to the allowable square footage or authorized square footage allocated through the routine maintenance and major maintenance formula. And this would have permanently increased the percentage on the authorized square footage to be the lesser of the actual square footage of the building or 135% of the allowable square footage. Recall back in the 2024 session, the legislature increased that percentage for 1 year only, school year 2025-26. And then it went back down to 115% for school year 26-27 and each year thereafter. This bill would have permanently sustained that 135% allowable square footage, but it was not enacted into law. And it carried a biennial appropriation of about $43.7 million. And that's before any analysis related to the recalibration effort. But that's it, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. On that question, just because some of us don't sit on recalibration, with recalibration gone through, how would that bill affect? Like, would it change? Would we need to modify that bill if it's to be brought forward again?
Madam Vice Chairman, the estimate for the routine maintenance was about $12.2 million. It might change slightly, not dramatically, but it would be impacted on the salaries being paid through the recalibrated model. The square footage allocated affects the number of maintenance workers and custodians, and the square footage paid for supplies and materials. So it might increase slightly, but it wouldn't be a dramatic change.
Mr. Wilmarth, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy to take any other further
Appreciate your
questions.
report. Anything, committee? As I said, great resource as we roll out the work we did. So let's go. I have Catherine, are you ready to give us a little walkthrough on a really great piece of work? I hope the committee's had a chance to at least glance at the efforts. So one of our priorities for this interim, Catherine, as you are very well aware, is enrollment's relationship to routine and major maintenance. And we're going to begin to touch on some of that today. And so take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, I'm not the Deputy Budget Fiscal Administrator, Matt Wilmarth. Catherine Camerati, LSO Budget Fiscal, and I'm going to walk through this issue brief on K-12 major and routine maintenance. This should be item 6-01 in your materials. Some of you may have heard a similar presentation before in past years, but this is some great educational information. As Senator Chairman Landon mentioned, this is related to priority number 3, or the relationship between enrollment and routine and major maintenance. So fundamentally, why would we discuss this to begin with? Well, the legislature has taken on the role of maintaining school facilities as a part of a complete and uniform system of public instruction. And perhaps the most key item to understanding major maintenance for school facilities is that there are 2 streams for which we receive major maintenance payments. You have major maintenance through the K-12 major maintenance formula, and you have major maintenance or routine maintenance, which is provided by the K-12 Education Resource Block Grant model that is administered by the Wyoming Department of Education. So you got 2 things going on. The crux of this issue brief in particular is the discussion of how authorized square footage is treated within both calculations. So as it stands, there's sort of a dissonance between actual and authorized square footage relating to most school districts have more square footage than what is authorized or you get funding for. So if we aren't using the actual square footage and using the authorized square footage, how do we get there? And how do we get to a total payment? So there's a lot of detail within the memorandum about the specific calculations that we're going to get into. But to begin thinking about the authorized square footage, we should know that authorized square footage is impacted by 3 factors: actual school building square footage, prior school year average daily membership, and the allowable square footage multiplier. For the major maintenance formula, which I will kind of refer to as our first stream, the authorized square footage is determined by taking the lesser of the actual square footage, or 115% of the maximum allowable square footage for all districts. The major maintenance formula excludes leased educational buildings or facilities and any enhanced square footage. There are also amounts for non-educational square footage that are based on a proportion of office and warehouse square footage to total educational square footage. In general, this calculation is updated every year to account for any changes to buildings or ADM and some other factors. So that's kind of our first stream on authorized square footage. Our second stream, the routine major maintenance, uses a similar approach for the authorized square footage, but rather than at a district level, the computation is performed at a building level. So all education, school buildings and facilities are included here, including the leases. Non-educational gross square footage does not really factor in here, but some additional resources are allocated for district level buildings. So we're on page 2, if I didn't mention, but now we have this authorized square footage amount. So what do we do with that? So the major maintenance formula, our first stream, at its core, the basic formula, if you take anything away here, it would be figure 1 on page 2. Page 2. The authorized square footage is multiplied by a per square foot replacement value cost factor for each building category. So it's multiplied for an educational replacement value cost factor, mothballed educational facilities, offices, and warehouse to arrive at this total cost of replacement value. The total cost of replacement value is then multiplied by 2.5%, which is a condition factor. The purpose of the condition factor is to assist in maintaining the estimated funding level of the building's condition at its maximum useful life. So it's used to help maintain it. So by multiplying the total replacement cost factor by 2.5%, we arrive at the annual major maintenance payment for the formula. So table 1 kind of ties it all together, and that's at the top of page 3. By showing the estimated school year 2027 major maintenance summary by building category, you can see in the columns we have the actual gross square footage, the allowable gross square footage, and the authorized gross square footage, and the per square replacement cost factor. Most importantly from the table, really the large illustrative takeaway from that table is you can see that in total, the authorized gross square footage is less than the actual square footage, meaning schools, again, have more actual square footage than what is being funded. Pages 3, 4, and 5 really get into how we calculate the major maintenance payments for each building category. And we can go through all of them, or we can just go through educational buildings. It's not onerous to do them all.
I think you can keep marching ahead. Let's take a quick look at all.
Okay.
Cap,
Thank you,
great
Mr. Chairman.
work on this report, and I want to get you all the way through it, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions. So
Great. So, Mr. Chairman, this really gets into the details of our first stream. So we're starting on educational buildings only, and we can expand on how we determine that authorized gross square footage to be used in the final major maintenance payment. So first, we need to find the total educational gross square footage, which includes the prior year's actual educational building gross square footage, including charter schools, less any leased gross square footage and any local enhancements. Educational buildings also incorporate portable buildings, but that's up to a certain point. Figure 2, as noted on page 3, shows that computation we just discussed. Okay, so we find the total educational building gross square footage, and now we have to determine the authorized gross square footage by comparing the total educational gross square footage we just calculated to the maximum allowable educational gross square footage. We touch very briefly on the maximum allowable educational gross square footage, but for some repetition, mainly for myself, the allowable square footage is a function of the type of building and the prior school year's ADM. And an important thing to note here is the prior school year's ADM calculation includes students who participate in full-time virtual education programs and charter schools. So the allowable educational gross square footage is calculated, and then it's adjusted by multiplying it by 115% to provide the maximum. So practically what that means is that anything in excess of 115% is not included. And that's just a function of the calculation for the adequacy standards. So again, we're going to take the lesser of the total actual educational gross square footage or that maximum allowable gross square footage to get the authorized. Certainly, it's good to use some real figures here. So for school year 2026 and 27 estimated, only 5 districts' actual educational gross square footage is equal to the authorized educational gross square footage for the major maintenance allocations.
So, Ms. Cameron, so what you're saying is every one of the other districts has additional square footage out there? Other
Mr.
than the
Chairman,
5 that you just referenced?
other than the 5, that would be correct.
So I want to, there's another piece of what you just said that I think is important, and it's something I want to make sure that I understand. So that's one of the hinge points where ADM does play a role in how we calculate a payment for maintenance of the physical plant. And we just got done saying in introductory remarks today that most districts are experiencing less and less students right now. What kind of impact does that have on the overall budgeted amounts of maintenance? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Mr. Chairman, we certainly can get into how ADM impacts the budget, but it does matter. I don't specifically have an analysis over time how ADM has impacted, but you can see it affects the entire formula.
So I think you can see where I'm going. And, you know, maybe we can take an even more careful look as we move through the interim. It just, we've talked about it for a while on this committee. Why would the number of students in the building have anything to do with the maintenance of that building? And I think that's a policy consideration that we need to think about as a committee. We still have to take care of these facilities. So does
Yeah,
that make sense? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, declining enrollment is considered upon a building's conception, and we do have a small section in there about when we think about new buildings, how they're constructed, but also, for example, within recalibration, some of the funding for those formulas use the greater of the prior year ADM, or now the 2-year average of ADM. And part of that 2-year average ADM helps smooth out when ADM is super volatile from year to year. So it's a possible consideration for you to take a look at when you have an ADM calculation within the major maintenance formula. It could be changed to sort of smooth out some of that volatility.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that. So Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Catherine, you mentioned virtual schools are included in the ADM calculation. That was something I don't think I'd ever really processed before. I know we have some districts that have substantial portions of their ADM are through their virtual academy enrollment. And it seems that they're disproportionately advantaged relative to other districts on their allowable square footage for their physical buildings because they have a virtual academy component. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I don't know if I could necessarily speak to a particular advantage of virtual schools having ADM. I'm not well versed in virtual education, but perhaps children come for other programming within the school, and as part of that programming, the building needs additional maintenance. Perhaps the state construction department or some other individuals in the room would have a clearer picture of how virtual education programs are utilized for major maintenance and why the benefits of including them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That seems like something we need to explore a little bit. I don't think we've touched on that before, but where we've got some smaller districts that are running relatively large virtual school, there might be some inequity in how we're distributing those funds. I mean, I think it's probably true that if you have activities or something and you're local, you might end up engaging in something that requires major maintenance, but a lot of the virtual students are a long ways away and aren't utilizing those buildings. So it does seem inappropriate that we would be allocating more funds due to a growing virtual component that really doesn't substantially affect those buildings. And from an equity standpoint, we'd want to make sure that the buildings were all treated uniformly.
You know, I think that's a good suggestion. Matt, do you want to opine on that a little
Yeah,
bit?
Mr. Chairman, they're only Mr. Chairman, Matt Wilmarth, LSO, they're only advantaged up to the point that their actual square footage is being fully funded through the major maintenance or routine maintenance formulas. They will be capped out on their actual educational square footage for that purpose. So there are 3 large statewide programs that provide virtual education. One is in Bighorn County School District number 1. The second is in Niobrara County School District number 1. And then
Newcastle.
the most recent one is in Weston County number 7. All 3 of those programs have more full-time virtual education students than their actual non-virtual education students. And they're servicing those students across the state of Wyoming. And so those students actually aren't in the physical brick and mortar buildings, but they're, sparsely allocated across the state. But with regards to your question on, are they being advantaged, center office? Yes, they are being allocated more square footage than they would have otherwise if those students were excluded. And I think it's within this issue brief, and Catherine hits on it later, those virtual education students are excluded when the State Construction Department and School Facilities Commission looks at capacity. And so when they're actually evaluating the capacity of a building, they actually exclude those virtual education students because those students aren't actually attending in person in those classrooms. And so if the committee wants to explore for purposes of major maintenance or the allowable square footage calculation, excluding those, that would be more in line with what they're doing on their capacity analysis. But it would require a statutory change.
You know, thanks, Mr. Wilmarth. And Senator, that might be something that is worthwhile to take a look at in our next meeting, just to do a little bit, give you an opportunity, Mr. Wilmarth, to walk us through a little more carefully on that. I remain fascinated. Appreciate the virtual discussion. That was appropriate. The other piece of that is what does the ADM do to drive any of this? For me, the more I've been around this committee, the more I keep wondering, why would we have put the amount of students in there in the first place when our job is really to take care of the building? I guess if you have more students, maybe there's a little bit more wear and tear on a building. So I get that piece, but that's the other part that I'd like to take a better look at. I want to make sure that as these enrollments go down, how dramatically is that affecting our ability to take care of these physical plants? Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, that makes perfect sense. And thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I
anything?
don't want to
Go
labor
ahead,
your
Mr. Wilmarth.
discussion and pause Catherine too much. We can look at the historical enrollments and the impacts on the allowable square footage over time to districts. I think you're going to see these are kind of district by district, case by case issues. The impacts here in Natrona County with their larger decreases in ADM, they're handling that in a different manner because they have buildings that they can close and move students to. It's different in a district that only has an elementary, a middle, or a high school, or a K-12 school. They really can't close a building. And so, and I think Dell and his team have explored this as well. It's just each district has kind of the unique circumstances related to what they can do to alleviate some of this excess square footage. The issues here in Natrona County can be handled differently than in Weston County. I will also say the legislature is taking charge of this in a couple different manners in Sweetwater County School District number 1 and Campbell County School District number 1 with those high school projects. Both of those high schools have excess square footage. And I think the intent with the renovations or the new construction for those projects will right size those to the appropriate ADM size. So once those projects are completed, you actually will see those districts have those excess square feet removed from the system and they'll be more right sized. But that's predicated upon that the projected enrollment that those schools are being built to matches with those number of ADM. If they're built and they're over capacity from the get-go, they will be kind of in the similar position they are today, where they have the excess square feet and the ADM isn't there. So I just wanted to kind of touch on
No,
that.
that's good stuff, Mr. Williams. Senator Robbins.
Mr. Chairman, and following up on that concept, we talked about this, I think, last year when we were looking at this, or maybe the year before, the idea that when the state inherited responsibility for all of the fleet of schools throughout the state, there were a lot of overbuilt districts and a lot of overbuilt schools. And so the thought with the major maintenance calculation was to winnow that down. And I can't remember what it started at, something like 185%. And then in a series of steps, it was to be decreased to 115% with the idea that districts over time would accommodate that decrease and right size. So we put that pressure on now for a lot of years, and most of them have right sized to the greatest degree they're actually capable of right sizing. But the other aspect, which is kind of new, is we've been building buildings and then underfunding the buildings that we built, right? So we build them, we do careful analyses, we try to project what the enrollment is going to be over the next few years. We build the right size school, and then enrollment actually drops when we thought it was going to go up. And now we underfund major maintenance for a school that we just built to erode the value of that school. And that's pretty irresponsible. So even while there might have been some good intent in the beginning, now we're just being irresponsible with the money. And again, we'll probably want to run that bill again. I'm sorry that our good colleagues in the Appropriations Committee over on the Senate side killed that for us all. But we'll try and convince them a little harder maybe next time.
It well stated. And I think that was my interest all along in really delving into this whole relationship between maintenance funding versus how many students we've got out across. And so this is the beginning of a really good conversation. And I think we'll have an opportunity to continue it into that second meeting. And we may ask a couple more things of you on the staff to help us, dig as deep as we can on this. And by the way, when we talk about right sizing district square footage, this committee has done a lot of work over the last 20 years to try to help districts to get there. You might remember the story last fall that was that Ms. Carlson walked us through on Fremont 25. We've worked very hard up in Fremont County to help that school district. Riverton High School is bigger than many of the schools in the state. It's one of those that we inherited. So we've been helping that district to get right-sized. So it's been an effort by the district, but it's been an effort by this select committee and the legislature. So anyway, well, please proceed. We'll
Mr.
never get through
Chairman,
this.
thank you so much. Looking forward to getting to more information to you so we can continue this discussion. So kind of rounding out this education calculation, going back, way back to the authorized square footage. So we have this authorized educational building gross square footage, and we multiply that by this square foot replacement value cost factor we were talking about earlier. earlier, but just for educational building categories. So for school year 2026-27, this translates to $232 and some odd cents, which is an average amount calculated for elementary, middle, and high schools. So when we multiply that authorized gross square footage, 17.9 million, with 232 point whatever, we arrive at the total cost replacement value of 4.16 million. And one last step to determine the final major maintenance amount, we got to multiply that by that 2.5%. So we reach our estimated 2026-27 payment amount for educational buildings at $104.1 million. So that kind of wraps up our education building discussion for the first stream. And now we got to move on to all the other building categories, the mothballed education, the office, and the warehouse. So moving on to mothballed buildings. Mothballed educational buildings are educational building square footage of any district building that's not operational and is specified as closed. It's considered mothballed. The formula for the major maintenance payment for the mothball building category is the mothball square footage multiplied by an exterior closure factor. The exterior closure factor is established by the state construction department. It's 10%. So, and then that amount is multiplied by the average per square foot replacement value cost factor of 232.76 because it's still within this educational category. And then finally, it's adjusted again by the 2.5% multiplier for a payment of like $23,000 for the 2026-2027 school year. So moving on to office and warehouse gross square footage. The calculation for both the office and warehouse gross square footage is basically identical and can be calculated really in 3 steps. So take the actual gross square footage and multiply it by an adjustment based on a proportion of total gross square footage to the district's total actual educational building gross square footage. Second, take the actual adjusted gross square footage that we just calculated and then multiply it by the per square foot replacement value cost factor for the office and warehouse building categories to get the total cost of replacement. And then you take the total cost of replacement and multiply it by the 2.5% again. So pretty easy there. And figure 5 in the text directly above that kind of provides the breakout and the anticipated figures for the 2026-2027 school year. But the total is about 11.2 million. So moving on to page 6, figure 6 on page 6, totally serendipitous. I'm not that good to just align those figures. That provides a historical illustration of major maintenance payments as provided by LSO's interactive data visualizations for school finance. I hope that you have checked those out and looked at them. I did want to highlight, and I believe Matt Wilmarth touched on this before, that spike in school year 2025-2026. So in addition to adjusting the multiplier, the 2.5% multiplier, the percentage applied to the education capacity was also adjusted from 115 to 135%, but only for school year 2025-26. So those matter. When the legislature chooses to change those, that creates big waves for the funding. And in this case, those changes led to an increased amount of funded allowable gross square footage. Okay, so you have the total picture of what's allocated by the major maintenance formula for educational buildings, mothballed educational buildings, office buildings, and warehouses. And so far, the anticipated school year 2026-2027 payments is $115.3 million for all the buildings. There are also other ways that projects can be funded. So for instance, districts have the authority to expend up to 10% of that major maintenance formula allocation on major building and facility repair and replacements not directly specified in the district's plan. And that includes expenditures for local enhancements. But those expenditures, they have to be approved by the state construction department. and all of the facility repair and replacement needs that have been specified in the facility plan have to be addressed. So they do have other ways they can fund projects, but there's some criteria there to achieve that. There's also, as a part of the state construction department's and commission's budget requests, there are instances when additional amounts are requested. And Co-Chairman Angelos, you probably remember this in JAC, the component level major maintenance, or you may have heard them called the capital renewal projects. These projects are similar to major maintenance payments, but those occur when a district doesn't have the adequate reserves to complete those projects. And that could be sewer, water, electrical, major infrastructure projects that impact the life, health, and safety of those occupants. So Figure 7 on page 7 illustrates the historical appropriations for the component level projects. And most recently, the legislature appropriated $31.7 million effective immediately for those component projects. So those are some additional options that the legislature and facilities and districts and the the state construction department have to utilize.
Easy for you to.
So that's our first stream. That's a big look at our first stream, our major maintenance formula. And we had some great discussion and some directives about providing more information about enrollment and more discussion on virtual education programs as well.
So Catherine, conceptually, I think what the legislature was trying to do with enhancements, and we can get into enhancements all we want. Essentially, that's additional square footage at the behest of the school district, but we don't leave them completely hanging. We at least give an opportunity, since we approved of them having those enhancements. We do give them that ability to, through, I think you said 10%.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. Yep.
Met other requirements, but we don't leave them hanging.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I would say that's correct.
Yeah.
So our first stream. Now we got to move on to the second stream, the routine maintenance through the education resource block grant model. And then we have some other items, and we'll close this out and we'll get into questions and some more discussion. So routine maintenance, our second stream, is defined as activities necessary to keep a property and the components, equipment, and systems of a property in safe and good working order so that the property can be used as it's originally intended. So routine maintenance includes, most importantly, custodial, groundskeeping, and maintenance tasks done on a routine basis by building personnel, and specialized equipment and building system maintenance that is accomplished on a routine basis. So the calculations for authorized square footage for routine maintenance are similar to the first stream, and we talked about that briefly way at the beginning, but those are completed at a building level rather than the district level. This results in a slightly different total amount for educational gross square footage. So the main components of the K-12 formula includes allocations for those custodians, the maintenance workers, the groundskeepers, and the custodian positions are resourced on a per school building and district basis. Groundskeepers are allocated by calculating what is called a preliminary base groundskeeper FTE, and then we add an adjustment based on the school level. And then maintenance workers are calculated very similar to the groundskeepers. And supplies and materials are resourced on a per school building and district basis as well. Now, the legislature, through its recalibration efforts, has sort of revised exactly how these materials are specifically derived as a part of its efforts. But getting into the details are a little bit beyond the scope of what we want to do right here, which is just kind of get some educational information. And it kind of gets into the weeds, but I do reference the statute there, and the bill is out there. And if anybody wants more information, certainly we can get into that. Figure 8 provides the historical routine major maintenance payments for the estimated school year 2026-27 and all the way back to 2006, 2007. So what I wanted to do here is that I wanted to show figures that were consistently provided throughout this document. But as previously mentioned, the legislature's efforts during recalibration, and Matt touched on this, have changed how health insurance and retirement benefits to full-time employees, so our custodians, our groundskeepers, are kind of shown, making these figures somewhat dissimilar. So you see on the graph that we shoot all the way down to 87 million. It's just for illustrative purposes. It's not really 87 million. There's still retirement. There's still health insurance. If it were more similar, it would look more like school year 2024, 2025, but not 2025, 2026, because we changed some of the allocations there, the 115% and the 2.5. So basically, what I'm laying out is some caveats for this figure, but wanted to show over time how it's changed. So that really is a wrap on my two streams, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but this memo is designed to address some other topics as well, in no particular order. The first being the treatment of facilities constructed prior to adequacy standards. So at its most basic level, we kind of run into this dissonance again, where we have these facilities that we've inherited, but they're not adequate per the statewide adequacy standards that we have that have since been created. So we got these buildings, and then we have adequacy standards. Well, the commission is required to annually evaluate the adequacy of all school buildings and facilities and prioritize the school buildings and facility needs, including those that were constructed, inherited prior to. So through this process, school districts and the state construction department work together on an extensive long-term plan. The purpose of the plan is to identify building and facility needs, new construction, demolition, renovation, et cetera, and any local enhancements to building and facilities beyond the adequacy standards. So the commission then takes all this information and performs an evaluation to basically prioritize them on different schedules. So we have two schedules. One is remediation of the building conditions, and then you have remediation of capacity needs, which we briefly talked about. So the goal through those two schedules and through this process is to eventually align these buildings with the statewide adequacy standards. So moving on, we also talk about changing enrollment in this memorandum, which is another issue that the state is facing, this sort of declining enrollment. So to start, when we take a look at how enrollment is considered and we think about newly construction facilities, I believe Senator Roth has brought this up. There is an enrollment projection methodology for the period of 5 years when we first look at new constructed facilities. And there is a way that the state construction department looks at changes in enrollment, especially declining enrollment, and can precise its analysis to help right-size a building. So basically, this is just to say, it is being looked at. It is being evaluated how enrollment is, what the geographic, economic, social factors of a location is, where a building might be placed. All right, so in figure 9 as well, in general, figure 9 shows how that enrollment has declined in the last 5 years. And shown in school year 2020, 2021, which is interesting, there's a notable increase in virtual attendance and a decrease in non-virtual or in-person attendance. But virtual attendance, if you look at that chart, it's pretty low with some slight, very slight upward increase. So essentially, virtual attendance comprises very little of the student enrollment figures as a whole and doesn't really appear to be like a substitute necessarily for non-virtual attendance. Ultimately, to wrap this up, figure 10 circles back to the sort of beginning of our dilemma and our discussion, our friction, a graph of the actual gross square footage versus authorized gross square footage. Sure, the formula has changed slightly over time, but ultimately for at least 20 years, the authorized education has exceeded authorized educational gross square footage. So some policy considerations considerations for you. Table 2 basically provides a big matrix of options of what you could do to modify the cost replacement value from 2 to 2.5% and the allowable education gross square footage from 115 up to 120%. Both the formula and the K-12 funding model are represented in this graph. And with that, you can ask me any questions. It pretty much wraps up my discussion here.
Ms. Camerati, thank you very much. Really a great report. Questions, committee? Questions on any of the above? It's interesting. It's interesting at the bottom of page 10, you look at 25, 26, and we did come close to actual, you can see where we narrowed the gap for that 1 year. And that shows pretty dramatically how far down that dropped when we didn't pass that to continue doing it. Catherine, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's keep moving on.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator, go ahead.
excellent report, Catherine, but before you leave, we opened up this meeting saying that our school enrollment is declining across the state. And I'm going to ask you a very broad question. Doesn't do justice to all the work you just presented to us, but your thoughts. We're going to see this decline in student numbers. Where are we going to go with this program where we try to maintain these schools with less people in them? Do you foresee that based on your studies and your work with these folks that follow our schools so closely? Do you see that we may reach a time where we may not have such a need for as large a facilities or as many facilities across the state? And it's purely your opinion, and there's no right or wrong answer, but your thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, I think it is certainly a shared concern across LSO, across the legislature, across the state construction department, and it's been a discussion for a long time. I don't think it's particularly a new conversation that enrollment is declining. Could I definitively answer that we need all the new buildings? No, I can't necessarily speak to that. But I think it is fair to consider right-sizing buildings to an appropriate level based on declining. And that's, again, I think Mr. Wilmar touched that it's a very complicated topic because it includes several different districts, several different ways about going towards solutions. And it's a broad discussion, but I would certainly say it is a problem. It is a problem. You are not wrong in that. Probably something needs to be done.
Yeah, well stated. Thanks for your comments. And good question, Senator. You know, when Mr. Wilmot made his comments a few minutes ago, Weston does come to mind and is a really good district to use as an example of really running up against what we're talking about this morning. And that is, you've got a school with a pretty big physical footprint and fewer students. But even Director McComey has pointed out, you can't right size that building very easily. You know, the building is what it is, and we just have fewer students in there. So, and you can't close the school because it's the only one in that district. So,
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think it's a dynamic solution that is going to really require some effort and conversations amongst you and your constituents. And I don't envy the position that you're in. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've had a blast.
well, thank you for backing us up. We appreciate everything that you provided this morning, Catherine. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. And Ms. Heitrick, I've got you listed here and would welcome any reflections you have.
Mr. Chairman, you're a bit out of order on your agenda. I think you skipped item number 5. which is the updates from the state construction department.
Well, I have on my agenda, the school facilities end of session summary.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, that was the presentation from Mr. Walmart that we opened up with.
Okay,
And then the next one would have been the state construction updates, but you were so eager for Catherine's major maintenance report that you put her first. So I think probably the next thing up is number 5, updates from the state construction department and the school facilities commission.
I am happy to go to the director, and I know he's itching to get here, and I guess I don't understand the agenda. I had Catherine down as ready to present. She did a wonderful job, and we just jumped ahead on it. I see what you mean, so thanks, Ms. Heitrick.
Mr. Chairman, we just all three didn't come up. I just handled that first topic on my own, and I relied on a backstop if needed.
Good enough, good
Um,
enough. I just wanted to offer any further thoughts you might have, Ms. Heitrick, and if you don't, we're going to move on. Let's.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to dictate your schedule, but since we just did jump ahead, it might be beneficial just for Dell and his team to, or Director McComey and his team to kind of finish off this topic if you wanted, and have them do their presentation. Then we can circle back to their updates. I don't want to dictate your schedule, but that might make the most
No, that's
sense.
exactly what I was thinking that we would do. And I would welcome, and by the way, Mr. Chairman, welcome. Chairman Tartar's here today, and would welcome Mr. McComey, you and your folks to come forward and let's since we have jumped out of order, I don't think it's the end of the world. We'll just continue on with major maintenance and routine. Do you mind doing that? And then we'll circle back to pick up on all of your updates and all the other things that you want to cover today. We'll get it all in. We're just going to do it a little differently than is written. Ms. Carlson, welcome. Mr. Rex, it's good to see you. Director, good morning. It's great to see you. We jumped way ahead and got into routine and major maintenance. So take it away on that front. We would value any interjections you might have or thoughts. We got started in a pretty good way. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dell McComey, Director for the State Construction Department. With me today, Shelby Carlson, our Administrator for School Facilities, John Rexis, our Manager for the project side. John manages all the construction projects, and our folks that manage those projects follow their John. So he has pretty good experience, and there's a lot of topics. We're going to kind of shift around and break pieces in for the expertise of the department as we kind of move through this discussion. Mr. Chairman, before I get into this, though, I would like to thank the committee and certainly our commission, our staff for all the work they've done over the last couple of years and the funding that's come about. I know the districts are certainly appreciated the funding on capital construction and the major maintenance increases over the last couple of years. A lot of hard work by a big group. It's just not any one of us that make that happen. We get a lot of input from the districts on the front end. We have our annual meetings with them. That kind of kicks off the ball with information we're getting from WDE on the ADM that there's been a whole bunch of discussion on as that moves forward. And then, of course, working the bills as we kind of move forward. And that's on our agenda to kind of give a little bit of a preview, kind of what our thoughts are right now on that. So, again, I want to thank everybody. LSO staff has been great to work with. And we really kind of tag team a lot of these issues. And so I think at the end of the day, I heard a lot of discussion this past session in the both the joint appropriations and on the various floors when they were talking about this bill. And that was this vetted? Had this been through the process? And Mr. Chairman, yourself said, these projects are probably the most vetted that come before the legislature. They go through a lot of different processes before the committee ever puts its bill together, moves forward. And I think that's, it's been a long journey since 1996, 2000, when the state took on the role of these buildings, and it's being refined, and hopefully we'll continue to refine that and talk a little bit about the issues that we're going to now talk about on declining enrollment and things like that. And so I think we're in a good place. And again, I just wanted to echo my appreciation to your committee and certainly our commission for that. So, and tomorrow we're actually having our commission meeting and I'll be talking about a lot of these same issues with the commission tomorrow and kind of what we're forecasting this next year for budgetary and some of just the items coming up, just the declining enrollment and things like that. So,
Well, Director, right back at you, and thank you. During the session, boy, all we had to do was dial the number or go out in the hall and you guys were right there. So it's been a coordinated effort, and really pleased with some of the results over the last 2 or 3 years. And you're to be commended for getting us the material we need to make good decisions. So on the routine and major maintenance front, we jumped off the diving board and into that pool of water, and would value all the thoughts you might have with what was presented this morning on that front. And then we'll take a break after that, and then we'll come back for an overall update and all the other information that you want to share with us today. Director, does that sound
that sounds great.
like a good way to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Please jump in.
So there's a lot of information, a lot of pages in our packet. A lot of it was previously addressed by LSO. So I'm gonna take note from what I heard from their discussion and the questions that you asked about as we kind of go through this. And I'm not gonna hit line by line, if this was the only presentation, because there was quite a bit of discussion already. And so when we start off on this agenda item number 6, major and routine maintenance, the routine maintenance is performed on a regular basis. And typically we look at from an industry nationwide stance is that's work that is performed annually or up to 18 months is kind of a national standard. Beyond that, then you start looking at your major maintenance. And there is a description of that in Wyoming Statute 2115-109 defines that. And then 9-2 3001 also routine maintenance. And I think to highlight that's to keep the property and the components, the equipment and the systems of the property in safe and good working order. That includes the custodial, the groundskeeping, maintenance tasks that are done again on that yearly type of basis by the building personnel and a lot of times specialized personnel. The districts will hire out and have somebody from the contracting industry come in and work on, say, HVAC, normal type of maintenance, things like that they may not have the expertise in. I note in our presentation that we're going to sponsor this year. We have the RFP out on the street right now. We're going to hire a consultant to come in and provide some training on routine maintenance. We're going to hold a 1-day course here in Casper. And it's not only just for the school districts, it's going to be for anybody that gets state money. So the universities, community colleges, the state building, all the facility managers, such as the folks that were sitting in this building, to talk about, what does a routine maintenance plan look like? What should it consist of? What should you be looking at within that? And so there's going to be the 1-day break on that. And then following up in that for the first time, we'll see how it works and hopefully continue this into future years. But then we're going to have some Zoom type of meetings. The one will be in person because I want to get managers from around the state here to talk about it and hear what the concerns are. Industry's invited. We're going to have a lot of the folks that work on HVAC and electrical, and they're going to be at the meeting also. And then in the future, we'll have Zoom meetings, 1 to 2 hours, depending on the various topics that folks are interested in, again, put on by this consultant. We've got a lot of, we've been exploring with our industry partners. There's a lot of them that are willing to put on 1-hour Zoom meetings that anybody can attend. And it might be on how do you look at maintaining a roof? What should you look at in that maintenance of a roof? Those sort of things. So I think this is something that we're going to project in the future. And so, what I'm really trying to provide here is really, for lack of a better term, a community of facility managers You know, you have in Casper, the city has facility managers, the community college has facility managers. We shouldn't just be relying on, if I'm a school district or I'm the state guy here in this building, that I'm kind of alone on this island. You know, reach out. I want folks to know these other folks in these other communities to kind of build that and move forward.
Director, real quickly.
Yeah.
You mentioned a statewide meeting coming up.
Yes.
What's the date on that?
We haven't got that scheduled. It'll be early fall to try and get that out.
Yeah.
And the Zoom, and now this is going to be recorded and the Zoom meetings will be recorded. And we're going to host all these on our website in the future so that as we have change out in personnel, or if you're like me, you're going to go to that one-day consultant meeting and saying what goes into making a routine maintenance plan. I can listen pretty good and take poor notes, or I can take good notes and not listen very well. And so in that, if you know, somebody's putting a plan together and they can come back and say, now what'd that guy say? We'll have it on our site and they could come back and visit that. And again, there's an awful lot of turnover in the facility managers around the state. So we're going to try and build this group and have them share information. I know the school districts do that in some parts of the state. They'll get 6 or 7 folks, but one of the things we're also putting together right now, we're going to have it out here fairly soon, I believe, on our website, is kind of a Q&A question. So anybody from the state side, from the school side, if you have an issue, say, hey, I've got X brand HVA system. I'm having these issues. Have you guys seen this? Or who do you have in your area that can work on electrical or whatever? You can send that out and then everybody can respond back. Shelby and I, when we worked for YDOT and we went to the AASHTO, the national meetings, they had a host set up like that. And so, you know, I could say, hey, what's going on with large aggregate payments? And boom, in 20 minutes, I'd have 5 or 6 states saying, yeah, we're doing this, or we had problems here. You need to watch out for that. So we're also going to put that on our website. And again, hopefully have that fairly soon to help build this. Where did that come from? Okay. House Bill 86 passed 2 years ago, established within that bill. It says, and this is under 21-15-116 on the education side, similar over on the state side. So section C of that, it says establish requirements for maintaining routine maintenance records for school buildings and facilities and the components, equipment, and systems of the school building facilities. So it's requiring that they now have a routine maintenance plan. And some districts do, some districts don't. They're not necessarily uniform on how they do that. And so we want to build that and try and come up with something that's uniform. And when they have to report, it's a report that we all can understand and help gauge. Again, taking care of a building is kind of a 3-legged stool. You got your routine maintenance, you got your major maintenance, and you have your capital construction part of that. And if any one of those falters, it impacts the other and costs more money down that end. So this is kind of that bottom leg that really supports as we move forward. So we're taking a pretty hard focus on this. We've made some strides, as was mentioned earlier, on major maintenance with the funding there and more to do on maybe the square footage. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit. But again, that's something that we're trying to move forward with soon. So.
Any questions thus far, committee? Please feel free to jump in anytime.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep going, Director. Thanks.
Major maintenance, again, defined under Wyoming Statute 21-15-109. That's major building and facility repair and replacement, and major maintenance mean is defined by Wyoming Statute 9-2 301B. Again, same statutes under routine maintenance, same area for school buildings and facilities. Major maintenance and facility repair and replacement, quote unquote, major maintenance means the repair and replacement upgrade of complete or major portions of a component, equipment, or system. When we talked about the routine maintenance, we were just talking, taking care of the filters or things like that, maybe keeping an eye on your pumps and the wear and tear on those. This is a replacement of those units, the big dollar, higher dollar type of items. And Again, it's typically accomplished by contractors due to the personnel demands and the accomplishment of the work in a timely manner, the level of sophistication and the need for warranty work. And again, we do certainly, roofs are a good example. When we have those things come up on our radar, that's one of the first questions, either on the state side, school side. Have you gone back and addressed that under warranty? What's that look like? If you turn to the next page, Mr. Chairman, there's some things that go into that where we can spend major maintenance on. And so code compliance is one. You know, as the codes change over the years, or you're doing work within buildings, depending on the level of work that you're doing in a building, it may trigger the most recent codes. A lot of our buildings can kind of operate under codes that are 20 years old, but when you do X amount of work, then the code officials may come in and say, no, you got to update to the newest level. That could be electrical, that could be fire suppression, things like that in a building that would be eligible for major maintenance. So again, those bigger dollar type of things. Major maintenance is eligible for site improvements. So your sidewalks, parking lots, athletic playgrounds, those sort of things. We've got some graphs at the end of this we want to talk about, but from the studies, Mr. Chairman, yourself, Senator Rothfuss, I know was involved in that. What we found when we had a consultant come in and review that 2% major maintenance, what we found is only 1.6 of that was actually hitting the building at the time. That some of that was also going off to the site work and things like that. And that really hadn't been addressed in, I think, that two factor in the past. And what the consultant looked at is we really should be having at least 2.25 hitting the building. And then on top of that, having that other 0.25 would be this site work. So again, there's a listing, I won't go into great detail, but a listing of those things that certainly fall underneath that. Then you have your system improvements. Again, the building is made up of a number of large systems. You have the exterior, your brick, that kind of stuff. You have your foundation, you have your roof. Then you have your HVAC, your electrical, your plumbing, your sewer connections, things like that. Those are major components, and that's what we look at as far as really a definition under major maintenance. Is that work eligible? It was noted by LSO earlier that when the districts want to do this work, they have to come to us. We review the work that they want to do and say, yeah, this meets the definition of major maintenance, or it doesn't. No, that should be routine maintenance, those sort of things. And so, again, we take a look at all these things that are cited under A, B, and C to really say, is it eligible for major maintenance? And then that comes into the reporting that you see, Joint Appropriations, Governor's Office on the 680 report annually, where the districts report on that work.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Del, on the site system improvements, we had a conversation quite a few years ago, and you remember it was based on one of our Casper schools, where system improvements does not include and doesn't allow reprogramming in any way of spaces. And the example that we had here was there was a big classroom. They wanted to put a wall down the middle and turn it into 2 classrooms. And we really never resolved that. We never provided an opportunity. We didn't change it in statute. We talked about it. We may have drafted legislation. I can't remember whether we did or not. But I'm experiencing it again with Snowy Range having the same problem, and they're going to reach out to you at some point because we'll have to work through and figure out how to turn that giant space that they have into something useful. But have you any thoughts on whether we should include like programmatic improvements or something like that under system improvements, or does that get us too far off of the appropriate path and we'd be better off just finding another mechanism? A component doesn't work for it. I mean, nothing we have works for the problem you had here and the problem Snowy Range is now experiencing, other than really its own little line item in the budget, which is a bit awkward. So what are your thoughts on that programming concept?
Mr. Chairman.
Director, before you get to it, let me just add this to it. And I think what the senator did was push us in a direction a little bit. It dates back even further than reference to this district. I toured the district down in Converse County several years ago when I was chairing this committee before, and they had a similar situation. So this has been around for a while.
Mhm.
They really just wanted to move a wall and they weren't allowed to do that. So this has been around a while and it touches on this suitability thing. And we took a stab at suitability and just couldn't get there. And that is important to us in this interim that we so take it away. What are we going to do on that front, Director?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, it has been an age-old issue. When I was first director in 15, Shelby and I were touring a number of districts and we run into that situation and we brought it to the committee because under the major maintenance statute, no, you're not allowed to, under the definition, move those walls. It's one of the part of the definition is of the existing building and it says this existing intended use and breaks it down even further. So no, that would become something different. You know, back in the early 2000s, there was some capital renewal or capital construction definition of projects outside of the big project. I would hate to see us put that under major maintenance because I think we're at a good place with major maintenance where we're not diluting the dollars to be able to maintain where we're at. And I could see a struggle in trying to keep there unless you're willing to go from a 2.5 factor to maybe something higher. And since those don't occur all that often, I don't know if that would really, there'd just be I don't think the funding levels would match up properly to do that, even if you went to a higher dollar amount, because it may affect one district and another district may never crop up in it. So I think maybe if there was some way to address that on a onesie twosie, maybe it's a request that comes through the district or we see and we bring it to you, might even be a better format. Maybe again, you call it some other capital type of expenditure.
You know, Director, that's a great thought. My mind was kind of going over into the component direction, but you don't want to dilute that either because those component projects are critical to districts out across.
Yep.
Everything from roofs to parking lots to things that they just simply cannot afford without our help. So you don't want to dilute that, but I like the idea of how can we zero in and give districts an opportunity to come to you and say, boy, this space is just unusable, but if we just did X, Y, and Z, look what we could, it just makes sense. And we just,
Yep.
If that was a category unto itself, what would that look like?
Mr. Chairman, I think we could sit down with your LSO staff and look at some draft of verbiage that we could put together and then not necessarily have it as a set funding, but as an as needed type of basis that then under that we could come and ask, just like component projects. Component projects weren't around. That was established over a period of time due to the need that we saw out there to do that. And I think you could probably do the same thing in that similar regard.
Yeah, Senator Office.
I think one of the challenges there, though, is that when you look at you look at the project that was here, Converse County, and now the one that Snowy Range has, it doesn't necessarily rise. I think they're looking for a total of $1.5 million, something like that is what they need to do this program that they have. The idea that it goes into the budget and it becomes a legislative battle, so to speak, over that $1.5 million. Do we include it? Do we not? Seems like for a project that is as minor as it is, just too much at that point. Whereas I certainly agree with the concern about we also don't want to dilute major maintenance by $1.5 million worth of major maintenance on that building because it's important to keep it up. But having the onesie twosie special categories work the worst, right? When something goes into a special category, that's what we cut in the budget. That just goes away. So the idea that the space then, and I don't remember what it was for the classroom here, that was only a couple $100,000. That was almost no money at all. It seems like there should just be a way for those to go forward. And I don't know what it is, but I do think the one-off, put it in the budget is probably not going to get us to a good place. you know, the idea of using the 10%, adding it to the 10% for major maintenance is a possibility, but again, for this project with Snowy Range, that doesn't seem rational either and would not be a helpful outcome. So I think we need to think, Mr. Chairman, pretty broadly about how to solve this, because the educational suitability aspect and usability aspect is just something we really need to come up with a solution for. And I don't know if you recall the space at Snowy Range. We were I told them to give you a call and, you know, have you come over and walk through it. But we own the space. It's school space, and it is programmatically useless. So we're just wasting the space. We're paying major maintenance for it to exist, but it's just kind of hanging out.
Well, and just to add to the senator's comment, well done. And glad that we brought this to the surface real quick. Not, Ms. Carlson, I'll get right to you, but one of the things we ran into when we tried, I think it was about 2017 or 18, we tried to get there on the suitability front, for lack of a different term. That's really not, I don't know that matters. What we're talking about, I don't know what you call it, but it's flexibility to be able to utilize the space. What we found right away, though, is just an avalanche of requests. I mean, it just came in by the hordes, and so you've got to be a little cautious there too, and make sure it's well enough defined that you don't overload the system. So, Ms. Carlson, go ahead. Weigh in.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, we have been working with Snowy Range Academy recently as we've been working on our O&M report and our reports, our groundskeepers. They have at least gotten a music room put in there, and I believe one other, but they still have these very large spaces that there's just no funding available there. You'll see, and we mentioned it a little later in this section, where a lot of districts will come in and they do what they call a renovation or a midlife renovation. So they will capitalize on the major maintenance portions that we can pay for and meet the major maintenance requirements. So we might pay to update the HVAC or update the lighting, those types of things. And then they use their own funds to do some of that other work. If they want to move a wall or do those sorts of things, they're using their own funds. So certainly not an expert at all on what's LSO is your expert on this recal, but the director and I have been doing a lot of touring, had an awful lot of calls coming in from the districts where they used to use some of these discretionary funds, their pre-1997 funds. The districts that had those to do this type of work, exactly like you're talking about. And they're losing the ability to do that. So there's a lot of concern with their ability to do some of those renovation type of changes that they want to with some funding that they had available. So it might become more difficult. The only other example I can think about, and we've certainly talked about it because again, it diluted our major maintenance funds. If you remember when safety and security really hit the streets and we started really working on safety and security, major maintenance, we put a lot of money out there for safety and security, but we then allowed 10% major maintenance security to be used for, or major maintenance to be used for safety and security to put in new systems. So if they needed new cameras or they needed new types of systems, intercoms, those types of things, we allowed that for 3 bienniums, I believe. Certainly does hit the major maintenance funding again, but it did give them the ability to put in new systems. Our major maintenance just doesn't allow that by definition.
Senator Office.
Thank you. So under the current system, I mean, how would, or assuming that they even could, a district or a school make a request to reprogram a space? Is there really any path for that? We're used to building buildings. We're used to major maintenance. We're used to components, but taking SRA as an example, they want to turn that big open space into a series of classrooms or Actually, I think they were gonna move administrative, but whatever. They want to program that space, put up walls. And I mean, we need a process where it goes to you and goes through the commission and can end up in the budget, gets approved, whatever the case may be, you work back and forth. How would that be done right now?
Ms. Carlson.
Mr. Chairman, right now, there really is no mechanism to do that. You know, we did have our section rules and regs, Chapter 3, Section 8, that was put in a few years ago to try to allow for some of that. With the recent ruling, that was determined to be unconstitutional. So we're still waiting on the outcome of the Supreme Court, and we have just put that whole section of our rules and regs on hold and are not doing anything. But that section would have allowed them to come in and say, this just isn't adequate for us to deliver the educational programming that we want to in these spaces. But we unfortunately can't use that right now.
Well, thank you, Ms. Carlson. And you touched on something that we're aware of, and that is a pending court decision. Chapter 3, Section 8 hasn't worked very well, didn't work very well. Courts pointed that out, slapped our hand. And so we do have some work to do to try to get to a point in this part of things, and we need an adequate definition, frankly. And I say that getting into deeper water than I can swim in, because really our expert is Ms. Heitrick. And do you have any comments in this regard, Ms. Heitrick? A really important topic, and it fits right into one of our priorities for the interim.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Tanya Heitrick, Legislative Service Office. And what I would say is, to echo your comments, is, you know, the Chapter 3, Section 8 provision really didn't work to provide an objective measure for the committee or the commission to assess educational suitability. And I do think sort of what you're talking around is educational suitability, moving a classroom for the delivery, breaking up a warehouse to be able to deliver the program adequately. I think you have a couple of options in the short term. I recognize component funding hasn't been utilized for this generally, but you could add it as a component project if you wanted to. Secondly, the committee could just decide these are educational suitability projects, which is the paramount goal of the state construction statutes. You know, capacity and condition really are there to measure educational suitability. And so you could add those projects on your own. There are other projects that have been added to the list and not for educational suitability purposes. So that's also an option. Certainly the state construction department may not have the latitude to bring those forward formally, but they could certainly report on those and you could add them.
So Ms. Heitrick, I like where you're going with that. I'm wondering if that's going to take a statutory change or a bill of any kind. And I would certainly think we'd want to involve our commission if that's possible, because we want to go through the correct processes. That's where you get in trouble if you somehow deviate from what you do on everything else. So does that make sense?
It does. And Mr. Chairman, if you recall, last year you went to Management Council to get approval to hire an expert in educational suitability so that they could advise you on an objective defensible measure for that. And as Matt and I were kind of talking over here, it's the situation sort of the chicken and the egg. Do you wait for the court's decision on that piece to hire that expert and then, you know, define it, or do you just proceed? And I would say, you know, if you know there are situations out there where the space is not adequate to deliver the education, I think you're on fairly solid ground to add those. There's a certain risk that it's not objective, but I have a hard time seeing a court that's going to say, yeah, that's unconstitutional because you know, they couldn't deliver the education, and there's evidence to support that.
Really appreciate that, Tanya. You know, it feels like to me, if this committee were to take the initiative to encourage some sort of format that allows our district to at least come to our commission, come to us, work through the department, that seems correct to me. And it seems like courts would at least favor the intention of trying to get there, even if it precedes a suitable definition.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree more. I think you have two problems. One is the immediate need that Senator Rothfuss was just identifying, perhaps in Albany County. And then the second is the long-term objective process. And so, you know, whether you add those few projects this year, that's a policy decision for you all, or whether you wait until you have the definition and then apply it statewide.
So committee, it feels like maybe we could ask that the director visit with our staff
let's give some.
and see if there isn't some kind of a recommendation for that second meeting when we gather, utilizing all three of you's knowledge on this topic, because Mr. Rexis has moved a few walls in his time. So that feels kind of right to me. And you suggested that too, Director, that maybe we can get to something that would at least help us begin to address what the good senator brought up. Does that make sense to you?
Mr. Chairman, it sure does, and we look forward to that. I think it's a good topic to address. You know, what we see in the room size isn't in the newer buildings that we've had since the department created the adequacy standards. It's really in those older schools, and they had really big rooms. I think it was Torrington or something we visited. You know, their average square footage was like 1,500 square
think-
foot, and they really needed like 6, and
I think
that's
Platte
what we
County's
thought.
got a
Yeah.
couple of, yeah.
And so that's what's going on at Snowy Range. Great big thing. We can break it into 4 rooms and better utilize and service for just adding 4 rooms in. Now, obviously, you're going to have some electrical outlets, and you got to make sure you put it in the right location, or maybe you have to add a little more ducting, but pretty cheap expense, I think, to go through and make those modifications to make it much more functional. So.
So just as a housekeeping, we are in the middle of, we jumped ahead on our agenda for folks listening out across. We're discussing major and routine maintenance and reviewing several topics on that front. I want to try to finish that up. So we're going to charge on through this. I want to get to public comment as well. Welcome anybody to come forward, but we are also charging toward a break. So we're going to get a break in there, and then we'll come back to public comment maybe. So go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had jumping back up to item A there, the code compliance. How much of an issue is that really when codes change and you're starting to do the major maintenance? What are we really seeing an impact from that? Can you quantify that for me a little bit, or is it just something to consider, you know, when you're doing the major maintenance?
It's something that we consider. The district's really, you know, again, Ms. Carlson mentioned that we were out and touring a number of districts. I think we hit 9 or 10 of them here a couple of weeks ago, and on the western side of the state. It's really more of an occasional situation and a onesie twosie. And so it was almost a little bit of discussion. It comes up sometimes, and so that's something that is now allowed. We've got a description of that a little bit later on. So one of the things that changed, the legislature made a change on bathroom facilities, and that became a code issue. And so the commission addressed that with Teton County on their situation on a restroom thing. So that fell under the definition of code. What we see sometimes is the fire system codes. Some of your ADA, your sidewalks, your grades, that's another code. Those seem to be the ones that are most common that we run into, but it's only a couple times, 3 times a year. It's not a big deal, but.
So Director,
Go ahead, Sean.
please proceed with your comments and suggestions and observations on routine and major maintenance. Can we charge on through this? Go ahead, Ms. Carlson.
Mr. Chairman, just one more, I want to make one more addition. At that same commission meeting, we did open up and put a action item before our commission to allow the use of major maintenance for the construction of those single occupancy restrooms because they were mandated by a law change in accordance with code. Those have to come before the commission to be approved. So far, we've only gotten the one, but we did open that up so it would make it easier for us to get those approved and through the system using this code compliance section of the major maintenance.
Okay, thank you for that. So
Okay,
please
thank you, Mr.
proceed,
Chairman.
Director. Go
I'd
ahead.
just like to again reiterate, there's a little bit of a break there where we do not oversee the routine maintenance in our agency. Major maintenance, we do. So again, that money that flows to the department, we distributed that out to the districts. It's again based on building size. So, you know, you have certain districts that have one building and you have other districts have 60 buildings. And so that goes out to the districts. Those do flow through our database, our AIM database. So we keep track of all that work as the work order request comes in and then what that final expenditure is. And then again, that comes through our project managers, John's house, of the side of the house for the routine or for the regular major maintenance, the 10% enhancement we track, the security 10%, we track all of those funds and account for that district by district. Some districts haven't used any, for example, security 10%. A number of them have used that full 10% that Ms. Carlson talked about from the 3 bienniums that kind of built up. But again, we keep track of all of that through our department. The conditions, the next page, Mr. Chairman, conditions and impact on major maintenance spending. I'm not going to go into that really. That was the discussion that LSO brought there, talk about the excess square footage, those sort of things. The only thing I'd add in on that is that I truly do think in this discussion, it really focused last year in our later discussions with this committee was what are we going to do with enrollment going down? My first time as director, we were in this growth thing. I mean, we had as many or more projects being built because of capacity increases. And now it's the other way. And what we're hearing from a nationwide statistics and look nationally is this is a generational thing. This isn't a blip. This is a generational thing. So as we're going to go down this road with these capacity issues, I think it's something that we really need to take a look at. And one of the easier ways to do that is that excess square footage. You know, there's probably more than one way to skin the cat, but on the short term, going from that 115 to 135 or whatever that is, I think that's something we are going to have to take a look at.
Yeah, I think Director, that's a topic that we can revisit a couple more times in the second and third meeting, just to try to get arms around all of that. It prompts some discussions, committee, in some directions that would be difficult to go. I'm going to be real honest with all of you. I think as populations decrease and we've got all of these physical plants out there, you start having to maybe have some difficult conversations about things. I'll just put it that way. And I think everyone knows what that is. Yeah, it creates challenges for sure. Director.
Yeah, so that particular page really talks about, again, kind of what LSO talked about, the 115 versus 135, just as a highlight. So there's about 4.6 million square foot of excess capacity in our educational buildings out there right now. So it's not a small amount of square footage. And
But
what we're seeing is going to get worse.
Fairness, some of that is very difficult to get rid of, right?
It is, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. Yes, on the next page, we kind of talk about that where we, you know, things that it's eligible or not. And we talk about grandfathered in those older schools, even the enhancement, what we would consider in a new school as being an enhancement, where they had swimming pools and things like that in these pre-Campbell schools. Those actually generate major maintenance because they were grandfathered in, but they can still only use 10% of their overall major maintenance for that. They can't use maybe a like amount. And you might think, well, that's not a big deal. I mean, how much of an enhancement is there in a building versus the total square footage? Shelby and I, on our tour, we were in one building where 60% of that building is an enhancement. 60% of that school building is an enhancement. So in some cases, it really does affect the overall amount of money that they have coming. So I think, and Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm going to give an editorial comment. This is my view only from the discussion in the Senate Joint Appropriations.
Just so you know.
Yeah, they, when they talked about the 115 to 135, the issue of enhancement came up. And I think this issue of enhancement got tied up in that discussion and conflated the view of the 115 to 135. And I think we need to have a good discussion here in this committee and with our commission so that we can, I guess, educate the rest of the legislature in that break point. What's an enhancement? What's not? Excess square footage, so that when this discussion comes up, hopefully if you folks schedule or move forward with the bill this next year, we can really get that broke apart. Because I think that really impacted that discussion and the decision that the
I think you're
committee
right,
made.
Director. It's not just a swimming pool.
Yeah.
A lot of other things, and some that can't be modified, unfortunately. So.
Yep.
Please proceed, and
Okay.
we'll charge toward the completion of any thoughts you have, Director, and then we'll get us a break.
Okay, the next page, we do talk about these local enhancements. And again, I'm not going to go into great depth, but by Wyoming statute. So that's something that's initiated by the school district, which is designed to bring the building of facility to a condition exceeding our statewide adequacy standards. That's the definition of an enhancement. And poster child's swimming pools, but there's certainly a lot of other things with gym heights and size, auditoriums, excess square footage, or things in that. The 10% in major maintenance is allowed for enhancements, but I can tell you in some of these buildings, particularly if you have a building 60% of it's, and you got to do the roof. This is where we're running into this. We got to put a new roof on. 60% of it's an enhancement. They don't have enough in their 10% major maintenance to even come close to covering it. But we can't let that roof fail. It's going to impact the rest. And we're trying to figure it out, and we ain't got it figured out yet. So,
Senator Ralphus.
I just want to point one thing out. I think it's important because I know in the Senate, there was a confusion about this. When we say 10% of major maintenance is allowed for enhancements, we mean to maintain enhancements, not to build enhancements.
yes.
You cannot, under any circumstance, and have never been able to, use major maintenance funds to build an enhancement. And
Yes.
I think it's important because that was the source also of some confusion on the Senate side. And I just want to say that a lot.
Yeah, well stated, Senator. Appreciate that. There are, Director, you pointed to it, and I do think we've got a little work to do for the committee to make sure we have our arms around this issue, and then we can share with the rest of the troops exactly what we're talking about, including the comments from the senator. So.
Well, our bad too, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we were sitting there trying to talk about it, but you all, when the session's going, there's a lot of things happening, particularly in JAC timeframes and things to try and let them get their heads around it, because the JAC's got an awful big lift in the budget session in particular. So
You guys know there's a lot to this, guys. I'm looking down at Senator McEwen. He's been on this committee now for 2 or 3 years. It takes a while. There's a lot here. And it's tough when you get into the chambers, to try to get everyone up to speed to what we're talking about here. So appreciate everybody's patience and educational attention here, because there's a lot to this. Go ahead, Director.
if we skip a couple of pages over and the top header is reporting, I think this is another important thing to understand. And so again, the districts, all that stuff comes through our AIM operate system, starts with them contacting their project manager, goes over into the financial side of the house. We track all those funds to try and see where they're at. Then the district's annual report, the 680 report that I mentioned earlier. And so we're tracking an awful lot of things. And when, we were having the report from LSO, this report here, I'm kind of skipping pretty high level coming across. This is not simple. This is not simple. There's an awful lot of looks at it and a lot of calculations when you saw the difference between educational buildings and warehouses and administrative buildings. 10% can go for security, 10% can go for enhancement money, all those breaks coming through there trying to keep that track. And now component projects, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that's basically just a large major maintenance project. And I do want to say, I think we've really, again, going back to 2015 since I came, I think we've made a tremendous progress in this. And I'm going to give you kind of where we started and where we're at today. When we started on major maintenance, right now, if we build a new building, they get 100% major maintenance starting year one. Back in 2015, it was a 7-year time frame before they got that full amount. First year or two, they didn't get any, and then they got 10%, then they got like 30, and then they got 50 and 70. Well, you got to be saving that stuff up to fix your 20-year roof. It's this big dollar amount. So the legislature changed that back in the day. There was a few other tweaks. We weren't even at 2%. We were lower than that. Then we went to the 2%.
We wanted to let those new buildings deteriorate quite a little bit before
Yes.
we put anything into
Yeah.
their directory.
And so now we're at the 2.5, and that's really supported pretty heavily from these studies that were done, a couple of different studies by consultants. If you come down to that bottom paragraph, you'll see there that again, that study showed that if you come to these next tables, we were looking at the 40-year time frame life of our buildings at the funding back in the day. And if you look at Campbell High School, you look at Rock Springs High School, you look at some of these high schools or big junior highs, they were right in that time frame. The amount of money the state was providing to support those indicated they would be right at their end of their useful life. Rock Springs and Campbell County are like 52, 53 years old. By making these changes, now we're moved that needle to where we're saying the life of a building is 75 years. 75 years, big change. $3.3 billion in capital construction forecast to be saved by the state by increasing this and moving that forward. The component projects, and again, those graphs are on this next page. You got all those kind of where they break over in the different amounts. The component projects, I think, is really that cog now that is making a big difference. You're going to see in our presentation here in the future, we're looking at about probably another 30 million. We had 30 million the year before. We had about that. Before that, there was years there were no component funding. But here's what it's done for us. We're a lot more sophisticated with our AIM database now than we were 10 or 20 years ago. The ability now to forecast the way we're doing building assessments, forecast into the future 20 years. What that has allowed us to do just in the last couple of years is say, what we're doing is we're looking 3 years out now in the future for major maintenance work and saying, does the district have enough money to complete that work that we can say is coming up in the next 3 years with the current funds they have and the funds they'll get over the next 3 years. 2 years ago, we had districts needed 1,400% more money than they had major maintenance dollars to do. We've got a couple of these influxes of this 30 million a whack hitting those big items in that hit those districts. This year, when we're going through it, we're at about 200%. We'd like to get it down to where they have enough money in their major maintenance to take care of that 3-year look. And we're getting close, and we've made really big headway with these component projects. So you'll see that request. We've kind of got it noted again at that 30. So this is all tying in. Again, components a big major maintenance project. And so, but it's making a big difference on just in that short time frame of going to the 2.5 and the 1 year of the 115 to the 135, that extra $30 million in there, and then the $30 million component projects. And what that's where I think we'll end up at is we'll have lower component project cost requests in the future. you know, it may vary by year when a big roads or something, but you're gonna see this 30 go down. Your major maintenance is gonna take care of the buildings and you're gonna have fewer capital construction costs. And over the long term, that's gonna be literally many billions of dollars for the state. So I think we're headed in the right direction. This committee plays an integral part, the commission does in doing that. So we've really made some great strides, I think, in this and trying to move that forward. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Director, and agree wholeheartedly. It's been a lot of work. And I looked over at Senator office and it said that a few minutes ago. You date it back a decade and we've been working on this. And Senator Dockstader knows. So that's a pretty good place. I'm not in a hurry with anything, but I want to give the committee a break and everyone here. We're going to reserve the right to get you guys back up here to finish up this topic. We jumped ahead to routine and major maintenance because Catherine and I were excited to get there. And so we'll come back to public comment, welcome that. But let's take about a 10, 15-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll be back. So we need to request that those guys We are at the 2-minute mark. In 2 minutes, committee will get started again. Okay, folks, thanks for that opportunity, Director. That saved me, I'll tell you. So we are covering major and routine maintenance, doing kind of a review of all the things that go into those efforts and the role that they play, including how it interacts with ADMs in our districts. And really appreciate all the comments that we've gotten. Catherine started us off and did a great job of an overview, and you likewise, Director. How about I toss it back to you guys, and any final thoughts or additional thoughts you have on routine and major maintenance, and then I want to get to public comment. We
Okay.
may have a have a Zoom call or two that wants to provide comment as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Right.
Chairman. One of the things that we haven't discussed today is kind of unfunded mandates that do affect the districts and the use of major maintenance and or routine maintenance. And that is one of the things, again, that we heard from the districts when we were out visiting here just more recently, but it's also kind of crept up at different times. And that is there's things that come through the Wyoming High School Athletics Association. And so it might be shot clocks, timers for their field events, things like that. And, you know, and until I was visiting with the districts on this just recently, I didn't realize the amount of dollars to just maintain that stuff. I mean, some of it, just the field and track timers, they're spending as much as $60,000 a year just to maintain and keep those up. The shot clocks were added. And so that's another, you know, cost that wasn't in our adequacy standards, in our design standards. We'll be putting those type of things in, but maintaining and keeping those things for these digital timers for track and field, the digital touch pads that are now there in the swimming pools for the events, things like that. It was a little bit mind-boggling to me as to the yearly cost to keep all that stuff up. It's just electronics and all of that. And so those are things that again, when I think over time, a little bit here, a little bit there, the end of the decade, you're talking some big dollars. And I think that's something that we need to keep an eye on. Mr. Chairman, you and the vice chair both agreed to serve on the adequacy committee that we put together, review the standards. So we'll be talking about that in a little more detail, and you can certainly keep your colleagues abreast of that. But it is something out there. Again, I just, you know, we deal with the physicality of the buildings and things like that. Just really isn't really a mechanism, and that just gets added into the system that the districts have to maintain. Another item, and I'll let you go through these next three pages as your leisure, but the committee has asked a lot, and I think it can probably help in the discussion on what's eligible for major maintenance and security maintenance and all of those things by building activity. So if you turn over to the page that's got this blue highlighted, we tried to provide by breakdown of the type of building, the activity, whether it generated major maintenance or it doesn't generate, and then is it eligible for major maintenance or some 10%. And again, a lot of clarity. So if you have questions on that, certainly reach out to our staff. I know your LSO staff is schooled up on this also, but we'd be happy to kind of talk to you about that. The next two pages, just finishing up, is again back to that discussion on 115 to 135%, and breaking that down by district for you, by the 115%, by 135, and breaking those into educational, non-educational, and then the total square footage, excess, those sort of things. You heard earlier from your LSO staff, 5 districts that were there. That was what we had last year. What we're forecasting this year is there's actually only 4 districts at that 100 that are covered under that 115. And those 4 all are the ones that have those virtual schools in them.
Is that right?
Yep, all 4 of those. Those are the only ones that were really break that point. So all the other 44 districts are showing that, you know, that 115, they have some excess square footage in there. Just a generalized comment, I think there is certainly a recognition from the districts of the impact in trying to right size. Here in Casper, there's a lot of buildings going offline. Cheyenne, with the recent stuff that's been done through the Mercer study, right sizing these schools and taking some other schools offline. Again, when we were making our tour in Southwest Wyoming, we heard from a couple, 2 or 3 districts. And so we're sending some of our staff out to relook at their programming in their school, reassess what activities taking place in those schools to try and figure out what's the best way to do that. And it might be doing some right sizing, maybe combining some schools, or maybe some grade reconfiguration. Rollins, we've had that discussion on grade reconfiguration and try and move, some of these schools might have a K2. Maybe they're going now they'll have room to move them into that K2 into make it a K6 or a K5 type of building. So the districts are looking at that, and I'm seeing a lot more now on that than I had in the past, my previous stint as director. So it's certainly on everybody's radar to try and see how we address that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Shelby, John, did you have anything else you wanted to add in on?
Well, appreciate you guys, and we may have some questions after public comment or, additional thoughts you may have. I always appreciate knowing all about the relationships out across the 48 districts. And it's worth noting that there is a lot of sentiment and there's some push among our colleagues to send everything to the state level. And I like the way we have it now. I like the cooperative way that we try to go about things. And it wouldn't take very much, however, for several of my colleagues to push for a more authoritarian model. I'm just saying that. It's worth throwing it out there because it's out there. And you and I have talked about that, Director, a little bit. So really appreciate the efforts to get out with the districts and bring it back to us and let us know what's going on. Thank you. Let's go to public comment on all that we've covered thus far this morning. Chairman Tarter, do you want to come forward and offer anything, or are you good? Okay. Really appreciate you being here. And appreciate our entire commission, by the way. Any public comment on major and routine maintenance? Yeah, please come forward. Absolutely. We'll take those in the room, and then if we have anyone online who wants to provide comment, we'll get to them as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Troy Decker, Facilities Director for Sheridan County School District 2. Three things I wanted to comment on. Component projects. I keep thinking of our roofs. We have 5 elementaries, 2 high schools, 1 remote elementary. But on component projects, our roofs, we've been using major maintenance where we can. And then one is our junior high roof is over like 1.5 million. We have another elementary that's near $1 million. And then our high school, we've already done 1/4 of that roof with major maintenance, but we're talking 3.5 million. Our annual major maintenance payment is just a little under 3 million. And so you can imagine. So the component projects are very important for the school districts to keep up with the major maintenance, and then to use that major maintenance in such a way that you don't use it on one single project and then you have nothing left for any other projects scattered throughout the school district with all the buildings you have. So that's one comment. Maintenance funding, I was thinking of your discussion, and we've been aware of this for years, but the funding of maintenance and the number of students in a building, I think it's fairly easy to divide systems up that are impacted by the number of students and are not impacted by the number of students. A roof will not be impacted by the number of students. It just doesn't. It isn't going to be. So, but maybe you have a 1,100 capacity building and only maybe 800 students. But still, that's a lot. You think of the things that do wear out from students. Maybe bathroom fixtures, right? Maybe carpets and flooring and stuff like that. Those are impacted. So there are impacts by the number of students or the lack thereof in a building, but there is certainly a non-impact on systems, exterior facade, inoperable windows. Your HVAC systems are probably not really tremendously impacted by the number of students in a building. And so there is that reality that is not correlative to the number of students in a building, but still has to be taken care of no matter how many students are in that building. And then enhancements, I just want to continue to remind you and all of us that enhancements are just not for fun. Enhancements can impact educational delivery of education, and specifically physical education. I think of artificial turf field in Sheridan, and recognize that field is used many more months throughout the school year than because it has the ability to be plowed off and played on warmer days, and whether it's the spring, the shoulder seasons. And so enhancements can impact. Of course, we know that for sports, there are just the reality of less injuries on those fields as well. But those do impact the number of times and uses and the number of students that can be on those fields. And then I think even a pool, a pool when you're teaching, it's part of our curriculum, right? Within our, specifically our junior high, and that's a lifetime skill. And so some of these skills are lifetime skills that they do learn, such as swimming, that impact the rest of their life. And so it's not just a K-12 thing, it's a lifetime impact on these students. And so these are enhancements that, and there's other examples, but enhancements, there's a reason why school districts have enhancements and pursue those for the better educational experience of students. And I just want to continue to bring that forward.
Yeah. Troy, thank you. Questions for Sheridan? Sheridan 2, right? Yeah. Troy, not to get too far into this, but you're having conversations now about the recalibration with respect to those activities that you just alluded to, the student activities front. Do you see that impacting your ability to take care of these tracks and fields and gymnasiums? And have you gotten that deep into the conversation as this rolls out?
Yeah, I think Brandon Finney could have answered that very, very well, our business manager for sure. And maybe he's watching this and he can chime in if he
Yeah,
is.
where is he? He usually comes to these, and we're missing him.
Yeah, I know. He had another meeting he had to attend. So obviously it's going to have a long-term impact on our ability to take care of these things. And so some school districts have the ability financially to move money around and position for the long-term expenditures that are associated with these enhancements. Other school districts will probably have much less opportunity to address those. Some school districts actually do have private funds that come in that support enhancements and those enhancements. Other districts do not. And so I think it's really, that answer is probably specific to each district and its ability and the circumstances that surround its structure, the amount of money they have, what they've been able to set aside, and also resources that are non-state resources that can be brought in to continue these enhancements and take care of them.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Further public comment? Anyone else want to come forward? Please feel free, line up. Let's cover anything you'd like to cover based on this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There'll be further opportunity later today as well. We're not in a hurry on things, folks, just so everybody knows. We want to get to it, so welcome.
Adam Mertman, Maintenance Director for Weston 1. First, I'd like to thank you guys for what you guys have done. The money that you guys allotted for the capital construction for our high school HVAC this year is huge. I'd like to thank the State Construction Department for all they do. So talking about major maintenance, I do got some hard numbers for you, and it come off the AIM website, the state's website. So our gross educational space in Weston 1 is 233,553. Our allowed is 165,267. So we are not funded for 68,286, so about 34%. We have 3 schools. We got a high school, middle school, elementary school. Our elementary school gross square footage is 64,518. So we're not funded for 68,000. So we're not funded for our entire, if you were to split it off and just take one building, we're not funded for our entire elementary school. So we're trying to stretch paper thin. And with the lack of enrollment, it's only going to get worse. Our elementary is only 66%, 66.9% of capacity. High school is 37% and middle school is 67% capacity. And those numbers are only going to go down.
So, Director, real quickly, thank you. Appreciate you coming forward and being here today, because Weston is a kind of a poster child for some of the conversations we were having this morning. What generated all that additional square footage? Are all three of these buildings prior to the 1995 timeframe, or were they just built for a much bigger student population?
So, mind you, I graduated in 99 from Weston 1. The schools were built 2000, 2001-ish. I had no, I wasn't even around then. I was in college. I have no idea what actually went on. So after the bonds, when cities built their own schools or towns bonded for their own schools, WDE built our schools, and they're considered a pipeline school. So what I've been told is we asked for smaller rooms. We asked for smaller hallways. We were told, no, we could pick a design. There was 3, 4, 5 designs, whatever there was. WDE at that time said we'd always be funded off square footage, not off ADM. We are stuck with hallways that are fit for 1,000 students. I would bet you they're the same size as Campbell County hallways or Casper's hallways for 400 students. Our classrooms are 2 or 3 times bigger than what they need to be. It's just a lot of wasted space that we didn't have say in. And they built 2 of our schools. They built both our high school and our elementary school. I don't know, Weston 7's in the same way. They built their high school, and I believe there's 2 other districts that got pipeline schools.
Can you restate your full name to make sure we've got it on the record?
Adam Ertman.
Yeah. Adam, I didn't know how to spell your last name, but I appreciated the conversations that we've had. I would encourage, you can tell that we're leaning toward the ability to maybe try to do something about this. And we value your input because that's a great example of what we're talking about with this additional square footage difficulty. There's not anything you can do about the number of students that are in those buildings. And unless we want to pay huge amounts to tear those all down and start over, and that's not a very good option either, is it?
And I would contend that a building not being used costs you more money than a building being used. Leave your house sit for 5 years and come back and see what you have, or live in it for 5 years and see what you got.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes.
I wish we could get all the way up there. That was we appreciated the invitation, and it would have been a great opportunity for us to get a look, and we haven't discarded that notion, but really appreciate you being here. Any questions for Weston 1? Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your remarks there. So what, in effect, what does that mean for what you're putting to the side? What is being then delayed in the maintenance being done? What, in other words, what are we going to see down the road that's going to become more of an issue that you're not able to accomplish right now?
Knock on wood, when we get the HVAC fixed throughout the high school, if we could do another capital construction project for middle school HVAC, probably some parking lots. We're using most of our major maintenance dollars towards roofs right now. We've done, this will be after this summer, I'll have 4 big sections of our roofs done over our middle school. So we really don't have major maintenance money sitting. I think we'll go into this next fall. I'll get another July payment going next fall with about $400,000 of major maintenance, hoping that nothing major fails. The difference of the 115 to 135 to our, so we get about $1.45 million major maintenance a year. taking that money away cost us right at $200,000. So about a sixth of our budget disappeared when they did that.
Appreciate, Adam, you being here. Committee, that sort of emphasizes that maybe at the end of this first meeting, we will give consideration to whether or not we want to continue to visit about that 115 versus 135. And Senator Rothfuss, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this was asked, but I don't know that I followed. All three of the schools are recent from what I'm understanding. They're all kind of year 2000 and more recent. Is that accurate? Or
No,
any of
sir.
the-
So the middle school, what we use for the middle school now, some of that building, a gym, there's an auditorium, and some of the original building, I believe, was built in the 60s, 50s. We've added on to the middle school throughout the years.
Gotcha.
So just the high school and elementary are new buildings. Now, there are a section of middle school that's a newer section, but a building as a whole is an old building.
Mr. Chairman, quick follow-up. Based on those numbers, I was curious if there was any work done to consider the possibility of maintaining the elementary school and the high school. And I don't know what the condition score is on the middle school, but it seems like based on your numbers would fit in the elementary school and the high school.
So, yes, I have.
Go ahead, Adam. Yeah.
I have cranked some of those numbers out. Our high school and middle school are connected.
Oh,
With
interesting.
the lunchroom kind of buffering between the two of them. Yes, we could square footage wise move middle school to the bottom of the high school upstairs,
Mhm.
elementary to the middle school. Square footage wise, capacity wise, makes perfect sense. We don't have the room numbers because our rooms are massive.
Okay, that was the other question I was going to have. Just because you've got the square feet doesn't
Yep.
mean you can do it. Okay, thank
And
you.
yeah, like I said, our hallways we're sitting on piles of square footage that
Gotcha.
are unusable space.
Yep, totally understand. Thank you.
That's too many walls that you got to move.
Too many walls.
And you can't move walls. Adam, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Campbell County's here.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. Dave Bartlett, Associate Superintendent for Campbell County School District. You've covered quite a bit this morning, so just to start with, you spent a little time on a recalibration, and I would tell you that as a district, we're still unpacking all of the differences. You know, we just did our preliminary budget with the board the other night, and I think our approach was it's not adjusting what was and what is. It's an entire reset to the funding model. So it's really looking at it pretty much holistically in a whole different way. So you know, some things from that, and I know in the prior presentation talked about the numbers shy of the retirement and the health insurance. And to be honest with you, that change in the funding model actually does impact things clear into routine maintenance, because in the past where we were funded for a number of FTEs and we could, with the block grant, disperse that throughout, you could shore up some things. Where now where we're being paid the actual, obviously, you know, there's less money to kind of shore things up. But again, we're still looking at you know, those impacts. In terms of the 115% and the 135%, you know, as mentioned, Campbell County High School being replaced, that will right-size the district at least to the tune of about 100,000 square feet. It has been an interesting journey with the staff as we're talking about moving from one building to another, and you know, they have all of this square footage from when they were one school, but it's far more efficient, you know, smaller hallways, just a better way to utilize things. So that in our world will help. I will tell you the 1 year that we were funded at the 135, knowing that was kind of a one-time infusion, I will tell you as a district, our approach was to look at major maintenance. What is something or some things we could do that we had put off traditionally, just because we had more pressing matters that would impact the district. So what I will tell you is, we took that infusion. It was just shy of about $3 million, and it will be an entire district-wide rekey and update of access control. Now, why would we do that? One, your district typically has a patent on a key that's good for about 20 years. You can renew it a couple times. So after a period of 30 years, your keying system in your buildings is no longer secure. Ours was right at the end of lapsing. So that was a way to totally address every building in the district and secure it. Second thing, with technology, the way it is today, access controls, there are a lot of systems out there that are easily clonable. And so we're also taking the opportunity to use that one-time money to do that.
You're talking about swipe card
Yes.
systems up there?
Yes,
Gotcha.
RFID cards. So between those two systems, that did pretty much take care of that one-time infusion. What I would tell you is, as everybody stated here, a building is a building. Having watched student populations ebb and flow, you would think, okay, we're down 50 kids, so let's just close 2 classrooms. Teachers don't think that way. Principals don't think that way. So they're always going to find a way to utilize that space. And then as you grow in your overcapacity, obviously you find ways to shrink and do that type of thing. So really, and I've testified before, maintaining our facilities for the square footage we have is really the right approach, and don't base it on your ADM. We are going to, we're a boom and bust state. We're going to be over capacity. We're going to be under capacity. When we look to replace our schools, we look 5 years out past the date of completion to look at that enrollment. Campbell County High School, we're building for 1198. We're going to be under that number now with the declining enrollment, but we've also projected an additional 16 rooms in case there's something that changes in the economy and we have growth. So, we're quick to adapt and build on. So I would just caution that I think our system really has done well to kind of balance that ebb and flow. But to be able to maintain these buildings for the size they are, not the population, then I think is kind of the right approach. And then there was a little bit of talk about adequacy or suitability. And I would tell you, and this is probably 20 plus years of doing school facilities in the state of Wyoming. When this program started, we had a lot of very poor condition schools, and that was really the focus, was take care of them. Then the next phase was, let's take care of the overcrowding, and then always the thought of, what do we do with those buildings that aren't overcrowded, but they're not in poor condition, but they're not actually meeting the needs of what we're doing, the oversized rooms, those types of things. And so I would encourage you as a committee, you're kind of the drivers when it gets to the legislature, to just continue to think about and be happy to help to chime in, but just ways that we can, whether it be major maintenance, component level, whatever it is, how do we take that building that is not in poor condition but can become more adequate for how we're teaching today?
One of the challenges, Director, that I think we have on that front is, we know where we'd like to get to, and we'd like to open that door a little bit to help our districts. But you don't want to just throw that door wide open either, because you open yourself to just a floodgate of projects that we can't get our arms around. So I think don't you think that's a challenge there, is to try to, how do we meet that need in a sliver and not just a deluge? That's
Yes,
in
Mr.
my
Chair, and I fully understand where you're coming from. Sometimes I think it's easier to address that when you're in a district that has multiple schools, because what I do over here, I have to also take care of these folks over here. So it kind of helps me maintain a kind of a standard. But I know when I've had rural schools or what have you, and they don't necessarily tie to the neighbor, they kind of want to push beyond. But I've had the opportunity to do full renovations of a couple of older elementaries where we used a combination of component level funding, some special money that the legislature had appropriated, and then major maintenance money. And within that, it's kind of that half-life renovation, as Administrator Carlson mentioned. You look at that 25 to 30-year window where you can come back in, maybe education's changed, but you can repurpose those there. I think a great example that's on your list would be Dillon Elementary. It's a 1960s building. Through major maintenance and component funding, about $10 million was put into that to do a full renovation. If you look at your FCI list, it's sitting right down there at the bottom next to a brand new Cary Junior High. So there's some opportunities to do that, but I think maybe the process of looking at it just in the life cycle of the building, that midlife renovation will add 50 years to the building.
Yeah.
So
it's been really successful here in this district.
Yeah.
There are about 3 schools, and appreciate it, Dave. Thanks. Thanks for being here. Any questions for Campbell County?
thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Further testimony, anyone? Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Andy Knapp, Laramie County School District 1, Executive Director of Support Operations. I wasn't really planning on speaking to this today, but I do want to bring a couple things to your attention that we're looking at in our district. One of them is due to the risk for hail and wind exposure in Laramie County, and I believe Albany County is facing similar issues in their insurance. Our insurance deductibles and premiums have gone up to the point in the less than 10 years from, I believe it was 50,000 per occurrence to 250,000 per building, to now we're looking at possibly having to hold the deductible with a higher deductible of $3 to $5 million. And so with some of the legislation that passed last year, and the reason I wasn't going to speak to this is I don't have all of the answers. Jed Ciccarelli is currently working on that, and all of you probably know him from our district. And by your next meeting, I'll have more answers. But right now, with the special building fund, we're not able to maintain anymore, and interest earnings being pulled back. We're looking at, if we have to do this, pulling $3 to $5 million out of our major maintenance in the first year to put aside for those deductibles. Now that may not get used, but twice in the last 6 years, I believe, 7 years, we've had events that have come through that have taken out as many as 3 schools at a time. And when I say taken out, not just taking the roofs off, but flooding the inside of the school, plugging up roof drains, completely destroying the roof, which then destroyed the inside of the building as well. Most of the roof fell in. So I think that's something pretty significant to consider. And again, I don't have all the answers for that. Hopefully by your next meeting, I will at least have a little bit better information. But $3 to $5 million out of our major maintenance is almost half of our major maintenance. The other thing I'd like to talk about just for a quick minute is something that's come up, and I've spoke with Director McComey about this. Our Southside City Water and Sewer, which is sort of a separate entity in Cheyenne from BOPU, even though I believe it's managed through BOPU, has looked at, because of the growth in the data centers out there, a reduction in water pressure to the point where at least 2 of our buildings currently, the fire systems can't be maintained. So what that means is one of 2 options. We either go in and remodel the entire building and upgrade the fire system and the size of the fire lines, or we add a pump house to the building, which includes not only the pumps for increasing the pressure for the fire system, but backup generators and additional square footage for whatever size pump house we have to build onto the building. And so I think something that I'd like people to keep in mind for consideration is that I don't believe that should be major maintenance, because we're not replacing or maintaining anything that we had there. This is something that came up as essentially an emergency, and I think we would want to seek emergency funding for at least those 2 pump houses. And currently the cost is looking at about $500,000 each. So those are some things I don't have the complete answers on. We're in design on the pump houses and we're in the middle of recalibration, obviously, on the other ones. So, but they're pretty significant hits to our district.
So on the positive side, Cheyenne Central won the softball championship, I understand.
Yes, we did.
No, it's good stuff. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Madam Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to rehash those deductible numbers. Current deductible is 250,000 and it's going up to 3 to 5 million. Can you go just, I know you may not have details, but just kind of data and facts help. So just a little bit.
What I would tell you is when we had our last large event, I believe it was 50,000. I can't remember if that was per school or per event. It was fairly low. Then it increased to 250,000 per school. And now with going with the higher deductible, that's not the premium, but that is to meet that deductible will be $3 to $5 million that we would have to have for a deductible.
So go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the insurance also, I think this is an important conversation and we've been talking about it in the Education Committee also, the idea that we pay an awful lot of money for insurance and we have the capacity to do things that are a little more sophisticated, like self-insuring through the state and then carrying a reinsurance policy or something along those lines. What is your, I'd like to have this for all districts. How much you pay for insurance basically, as well as what the terms are for those insurances. So what is it ending up costing us for the insurance side relative to what we get out of it, so to speak? Can you provide us with more of a sense of what your costs are and what you've applied for as a result of the events that you're talking about?
I apologize. I do not have those
That's okay.
numbers. I would have to get that from our business manager.
Thank you. And we can dig more into that, Mr. Chairman, and try and learn it. But this is a question I don't know if Dell's prepared to answer, but for our state buildings, our non-school district buildings, how do we insure those? Do we use an internal risk pool and then carry a reinsurance?
Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, right up front, I'm going to say I'm not the director of A&I, so I'm going to preface this. But yes, the state has a self-insured risk pool that you mentioned, and I think they go through that reassessment because last year we had a major hail event in Cheyenne, and so I know there was insurance adjusters that came out and looked at that in cooperation with A&I's risk office, and I think the numbers are like 50 million is what we're getting in repairs. It's going to be higher than that on the state buildings just from that one event. So pretty substantial.
Have we, Mr. Chairman, Dell, have we looked at or evaluated taking in effectively all of the schools in the state? I mean, that's a big lift. It expands the risk pool. We'd have to expand the cost of the reinsurance that's backing it. But typically, if we're paying for an external product, it's going to be more expensive in the long run relative to the state taking it on, assuming that we have a backstop like reinsurance, right? So have we looked at that at all?
Not that I'm aware of. Could have been done many years ago,
Okay.
but not that I'm aware of. So.
All right. I think, Mr. Chairman, I think we should take a preliminary look at it, maybe a high-level look at first to see if it makes sense for us to contemplate that, because the idea that our districts are paying for insurance and having to negotiate that, that you're even experiencing that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. And every district has to do it for every building in the districts, and it's not helpful for the state, but perhaps that's wrong, and maybe we can dig into it a little bit and learn more.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I know the school districts, there's a couple of different mechanisms. I think that they utilize, some of them do pull together. I had the conversation with Laramie One prior to going out and doing the tour in Southwest Wyoming. So I did ask them, because that's one of the things that's going to affect major maintenance. They were using that pre-97 money to kind of hold that. Now it's going to come out of the major maintenance to hold that, which is yes, they can and hold that to do that. And so I brought that up with some of the other districts. Some of them said it's not a big issue. They don't have the hail. They're not seeing some of it, but in other places they are, in Wyoming. So it is something out there. Insurance is just going nuts. For me personally in Cheyenne, same thing. It's literally quadrupled in the last year.
So, yeah, keep going, Senator. Good stuff.
For that matter, it does seem to be a Cheyenne thing in recent years more than other places. I'm not saying we don't have hail in other places, but Cheyenne has been uniquely singled out, it seems. Is there anything we can do from a design standpoint? That we're building new schools right now, obviously in Cheyenne. We've got a few that we're working on. Can we be thoughtful in that to de-risk that asset so that it's going to withstand that larger hail? Is that something that we're looking at in our design considerations?
Andy, can we go to titanium roofs?
Right.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, we have gone, I will tell you, some of the roofs that were taken off were they're sonophil roofs, or those white PVC roofs you see. Those in the hailstorms, what happens is it's usually really hot before the hail hits, and it cools off so quick they get brittle and it pokes holes in them. And then the hail we had was pretty significant. So we probably had 8 inches of hail, which plugged the roof drains. And then, of course, the water ran back through those holes is what flooded the building. So we have gone back to all EPDM roofs, so the black rubber ones. They do help. They can still be damaged. Generally, it doesn't poke the same kind of holes in them. It can still flood the roof drains. And if there are holes, it can flood some things. Probably one of the biggest things we run into with those at times are the wind events that'll eventually work them loose. And we lost one on Story Gymnasium last year. The administration building got tore off this year. It's under construction right now. And South High School's pool has been torn off twice. So, so there's still that, but.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So, Director, I think we've really hit on another item that the committee would like to learn a little bit more about. I wonder if you could ponder that between now and the second meeting, and interested in what's going on elsewhere. I know that we'll take it up on the Corporations Committee in 2 days. Thursday and Friday will be one of the items that we're concerned about is insurance in general. So it stands to reason that we better, cross our T's and dot our I's on the School Facilities Committee, and that might be something that we want to take a look at. I wonder what it might take to self-insure, for example.
Yeah.
So
I see Representative Bratton has a hand.
let's Representative Bratton. Thank you. Sorry, we didn't mean to miss you.
That's all right. I just put my hand up. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about the loss in pressure and water pressure. Could you elaborate, either restate and then elaborate a little on what has caused the loss of water pressure in your schools?
Mr. Chairman, on the southeastern side of Cheyenne, there's a lot of growth going down there. That's where some of the data centers are going in. There's a very large subdivision, I think like 6,700 homes out there, the Loomis property. And so BPOU has been running new water lines. This actually came up for Central Wyoming College, the exact same thing last year. And so the SBC took their contingency funds to fund putting in the pump and those mechanisms for the community college. And they were under the gun to get it done right away because it was moving. This is the similar situation now that's addressing as they're kind of moving their work that they've been notified. And there was some given timeframes also. It was very timely as to when it needed to be done. It wasn't like we can wait a year and a half. These are kind of ongoing situations. So when Mr. Knapp and I had the conversation, you know, the commission does have emergency funds available. So I said, well, that's in the short term to get it done versus having to go through the whole legislative process. And I think the legislature would agree it'd be important to be able to do that. So I was confident we'd probably get some funding, but just in the time frame, it may be something as they work through their costs to come to the commission on.
Representative Bratton, follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear, you're saying that the subdivisions that are being built and the data centers are taking the water, utilizing the water, and that's what's causing this issue with the schools.
Director, is that, so the data centers aren't built yet, right?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's 4 of them that are built in Cheyenne now. And then there's the big one that's just starting out that way. But I think it's just an overall, and I don't want to speak for BPOU. I mean, we could have them come in and have a representative talk about it. But they, I think it's just an overall review and of pressurization throughout Cheyenne in general. Up north, if you've been down to Frontier Days, they built another big water tower on the north side of Story Boulevard, just about where the mall's at up on the hill, had the big mural on it. So I will say that BPOU is, in what I've seen around the state, is very progressive in trying to meet the needs and the demands and how they fund that compared to some other communities. And Cheyenne's just having that growth down there with both businesses and future subdivisions. When I say 6,700 homes, you also have the Whitney Ranch subdivision. I think it's about 2,some hundred homes. But that's over the next 20 years. It isn't happening tomorrow. But they are building homes in both those subdivisions. And again, that's the east side of town. Certain parts of town, I haven't heard anything from pressure problems. It just seems to be concentrated down there on the south, and Cheyenne is kind of looped on the west with the base, and then 5-acre lots to the north and around to the northeast. And so growth in Cheyenne is actually occurring down in like that east and southeast section of Cheyenne.
Thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, for the public, the BOPU is the Board of Public Utilities. Is that who you're
Yes.
referring to?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Geringer.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and just maybe a slight bit of clarification here too. So we're talking about the BOPU has the majority of what serves the city of Cheyenne. Then we have the South Cheyenne Water and Sewer District, which is kind of, it takes its water from BOPU, but it's its own district and maintains those facilities somewhat separately from the BOPU. And so in any area where you do have growth, you're going to have changes in pressure over time until they try to model everything out, but it's not, it can't really be distinctly pointed at one particular cause necessarily. As the director pointed out, there's housing, there's businesses, there's data centers, there's a whole bunch of different things going on in that area. And so for us to say it's one particular use or not, it's something that, as identified as an issue, it's going to have to be accommodated, whether with the South Cheyenne Sewer District, Water and Sewer District, or the BOPU, or the overall system as a whole. So we need to be careful about what the identified causes are, I think.
Yeah, really appreciate those comments, Representative. Well stated. So, Andy, is there any, I'm just curious, we've got an issue here in Natrona County that I don't think has affected any of our schools yet in terms of insurance, but some of our special districts are under real stress because of the property tax situation. And one of them is a fire district, and we face losing a fire district. So that just folds right in with all this insurance talk. And I just wanted to get that out there, that's another area that might potentially bring our schools into a concern. But anyway, just a thought. Committee, anything? Representative Bratton?
Thank you. Just one more follow-up. Is this BOPU, is that a planning commission appointed by the Cheyenne County Board of, or the county commissioners?
That's a great question, Representative. I think I'm going to have one of your colleagues answer that question. Representative?
Yeah,
wanna
thank you,
take a
Mr.
stab at
Chairman.
that?
Look, it's somewhat related to the city of Cheyenne. So it's got its own separate budget, its own separate operating budget, but it's appointed by I believe by the city council who serves on that commission. It's a quasi city agency, but kind of stands on its own, similar to say our well, I won't go there, but it would be appointed by the city council itself, the mayor, and then the city council confirms. So it's an agency of the city, but not the county itself.
All right, thank you.
Annie, any follow-up to? Appreciate you being here today. And
Yeah, no, Mr. Chairman, I think that's all. Hopefully at the next meeting, I'll have a little more information on that, on where we stand on both of those issues.
On a separate topic, talking about major maintenance, I was going to ask you today about McCormick. And there's lots of activity going on in Laramie 1, as we know, and much of it needed, and it's been needed for quite some time. But that is a renovation that you're doing on that facility. Is that correct? And is that work ongoing, or where are we at with McCormick?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is ongoing. It's phased. It's a 3-phase project over 2 years. And so with school still in session, that's a major renovation upgrade to the whole building. It started with essentially, if you're familiar with the school at all, in the front areas, the administration part, adding secure vestibules and changing the administrative layout in there. And then as we move through the buildings, moving and changing some classrooms and kind of right sizing all of that. And we'll be going into the second phase here in the fall, and then next spring into the third phase of that.
Well, it sure worked for Dean Morgan here. And so I was interested in how that's going. And that's primarily, that hasn't come across the radar screen on this committee that much. So you're doing some of that as Laramie 1, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. That's basically a major maintenance project for the most part. And we had saved up for that, and that's also why we're phasing it through 3 phases. We're also currently in the process, just a little update, because thanks to all the money that has come through for the 2 elementaries we had, ARP and the new 5-6, which is called Mountain View. ARP Elementary has been bid. The contractor was approved Monday night at the board meeting. We'll break ground about the second week of June, it looks like. And the new 5-6 should break ground about 30 days after that. We're also currently in programming and getting ready for a designer on the addition to East High School. Addition and some renovation work for CTE spaces and athletic spaces. And then we also have the money coming in June for Hobbs Elementary. So we'll be looking for a designer.
So our subs in the southeast part of the state are going to be busy.
They're busy.
Yeah, busy. Director, any final comments on?
No, I think that's all. Good news on the ARP. It came in right at our budget that we had. And so I was a little bit worried about all the growth that we just talked about going on in east part of the state, whether, we were going to have to dip into the inflationary funds or not. And at this one, we didn't. And there was a lot of bidders on the project. So hopefully on next month, when the 5-6 comes out, we'll have a good bidding climate again on that. And so hopefully those are both good. The other thing, following back to the insurance, I don't know if they're still in here or not, but there was. I see them sitting in the back of the room, some folks that might have some ideas on insurance and kind of how that's handled by the districts. back in the back that might want to weigh in on that. So.
Yeah, I think that's something the committee would sure be interested in. Director, anything you could come across and, maybe there's something we could, I appreciated the senator bringing that up. Andy, thanks for being here. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. It's nearly afternoon, so I'll wish you a good afternoon as well.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Had not intended to speak with you today, but do want to provide you some preliminary information about insurance. Specifically, talking about property and casualty insurance for school districts. So there is a program known as the School Risk Retention Program, sometimes referred to as SIRP. School Risk Retention Program. There are currently 32 districts that participate in the School Risk Retention Program. It's a joint powers board. So they have this intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the districts to create this entity to partially self-insure school districts. You don't want to go 100% risk in. That's sort of crazy idea. So you get somebody like Lloyd's of London, Hartford, one of these big international insurers to provide reinsurance. So you insure up to a certain limit, and then you buy reinsurance in the market through that entity to kind of back it up. That's your backstop. So when you face catastrophic loss, you are not 100% all in on your own. You have reinsurance to cover that for you. So you're looking at now, what are the kinds of claims that you can anticipate? And the reality is that premiums are driven by claims. In any sort of insurance, when you want to know what is insurance cost, you look at, well, what are we paying for payouts on that? So when you think of the property element for this, you look across Wyoming and you say, so what has happened? What is our experience? And SIRP is fortunate enough that it can look at its own experience. And we have corner to corner in Wyoming. We have in Park County, we have school districts up there, and then down in Laramie County, we have Laramie 2 along the very eastern edge of the state. And to be fair, Wyoming's most significant wind hail corridor for property damage is probably along the eastern edge of the state. So if you look at Pine Bluffs, Burns, Torrington, up into to Niobrara County and on north up to Gillette, Tornadoes and Wright. Those are that's the wind alley of Wyoming. But then you look at, of course, coming across the state, and you look at areas where we have the big wind farms, and those are other areas of significant potential for wind damage. The thing to know about property insurance is that wind hail is a category of loss in and of its own. So when you talk about hail damage and you're thinking about the big ice pellets that come out of the sky, that's one type of damage. But the winds, the severe winds, the 60, 70, 80, 100 mile an hour winds that we have in Wyoming can create damage in and of itself. You can tear the siding off of a building with winds. Recently, we saw trees being knocked over and landing on buildings and being damaging to buildings. So wind hail is a category that is not just a Wyoming invented category, it's part of the insurance industry's category of loss, looking at property loss. So all of those types of events together create a certain risk. And so when you look at Torrington schools, Goshen County, you're going to have a lot more risk there than perhaps say in Lander. And so how do you balance those? But make no mistake, we have had hail claims in Park County. So we've seen roof damage in Park County from hail that has caused loss that requires replacements of roofs. And so as you deal with that, the other factor that impacts it is the actual cost of replacing your loss. So now what does it cost to replace what we've lost? So insurance, you can either have the actual property value or the replacement value. So replacement value, what does it cost to put a new roof on? Actual property value, what's the worth of the roof over time? In the beginning, it's going to be worth a lot more than it will be over time because it's degraded, it's worn down. And so in the private industry, the move is away from actual replacement value to just that actual value, that depreciating value over time. So as a homeowner in Cheyenne, if I have a brand new roof, it gets replaced at the cost of a brand new roof in the commercial market. But if I have that actual property value and it's a 10-year-old roof, I'm going to be paying part of the cost of that roof myself. That's the trend in the commercial industry. Used to be everybody got the replacement value. That's the way that it worked. Some people still have that, but it's moving away from that. SERP still is looking at the actual at that replacement value. So what does it cost to replace it? That's what premiums are driven off of. And so we're looking at those trends in the market, but then the cost of replacing that roof has gone up dramatically. So if you talk about just say an average Wyoming roof, so a homeowner roof, the average roof cost 10 years ago might have been $10,000. Today it's $15,000 to $20,000. So we've seen that cost of the replacement is skyrocketing. It's shooting up. More expensive materials, less available labor, other factors that are driving what does it cost to replace that damaged property. So the schools live in the same world that these other things are in. And the reality is that when you're dealing with sort of reinsurers like Lloyd's of London, Hartford, it doesn't matter if we're talking a hurricane in Miami or we're talking a hail event in Wyoming. When they're looking at catastrophic wind and hail loss, they're saying, okay, so what's happening and what are the costs for premiums? So buying into that market becomes more and more expensive over time. You've probably heard about Florida homeowners that can no longer buy that sort of insurance. So the reality today is that schools are facing higher and higher replacement costs. We're seeing more and more frequency of damage and higher degree of damage. And so there is, because claims drive cost, there is going to be an increase in insurance. So by pooling, you are able to manage that. And with these 32 entities in SERP, they're able to balance that out. But they do have to be careful to say, how is that going to be fair? Because quite honestly, there was a time where we had glass skylights on buildings in Torrington. And when it's continually getting pounded by hail, makes no sense to have glass skylights. How do you protect against it? What can we do from a structural sense to say, how do you reduce damage? And so you either look at the materials or you look at how do you replace that structure so that it's not going to face that sort of continual damage. So the pool does look at managing what it can for that, but also what is the fair distribution of costs. Are you going to put that value 100% spread throughout the pool? Or are those that are in more risk-prone areas going to carry higher wind hail deductibles than those that are in less wind-prone areas? And so it's definitely a managing of how you deal with the risk. But at the end of the day, SERP doesn't exist to make money to pay shareholders. It exists to pay the claims on the buildings for Wyoming schools. So that's the 100,000-foot view. And at a future point, be happy to talk to you at a deeper level.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Farmer. And that's valuable information. I think the interest on behalf of the committee would simply be, are we doing all that we can do to help the districts to get there? If this is going to be a driver of cost, we're interested in that as well. I mean, that affects all other funding levels.
And Mr. Chairman, I think you see Casper, Cheyenne are not part of the SERP program, in part because let's say a catastrophic wind hail event hits the city of Cheyenne, and I don't know how many it is, 30-some schools, chances are half of them, maybe more,
Right.
sustain damage. You could actually turn a pool, a statewide pool, upside down when a catastrophic weather event hits an area that has a large number of targets.
Yeah.
And so you do have to be strategic in thinking about how you balance and manage that risk across the state.
Yeah. Go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
I think that gets to the challenge from the state's perspective. State money pays for the insurance. State money pays for the part that isn't paid by insurance. State money pays for the reinsurance at the end of the day. It's all state money going in, but then it goes to districts and they pay different amounts. They have different risks, different probabilities, different schools end up with it. But at the end of the day, all the money came from state funds, and we have all of these districts going in and doing different things and having different costs in a challenging way. That's where my thought of why do we do it this way comes in. If the states literally through whether it's through the funding model or however else we're doing it, picking up the tab on everything across the board, why do we need it to be complicated? And SERP is simplifying it already to some degree, but is that as simple? It seems like it could be more simple to the extent that at the end of the day, the state's on the hook for everything. We have to have our schools open. We're going to fix it. We're the funder of last resort in all of these circumstances. I don't know why we create the complexity of 48 different schools with all of these different entities that have to have insurance, and then people are doing the actuarials to figure out, all right, well, this school is in a high risk zone, which happens to be in Wyoming. This one is a lower risk zone, which also happens to be in Wyoming. And we figure all of that out. It seems like we're doing a lot of math that doesn't have to happen when at the end of the day, the bill is going to come right back to the state of Wyoming. What are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Farmer?
Mr. Chairman, I do think that that's something that deserves a deeper conversation. There's a few elements I would take exception. I'm not sure the state actually does adequately cover insurance. Despite claims of the consultant, I don't think that actually would be the case. But that's a separate dispute. I think part of the reason that this happens is that you do have local folks, municipalities, school districts in this case, that are looking at what is our risk and what is the most cost affordable risk for us. So in maybe Fremont County or somewhere else, they might be able to acquire something at the best rate for that part of the state, as opposed to buying a blanket policy that covers the entire state with sort of the same parameters. So I think you're having that math done at the local level to assess the local risk to get the most cost-effective remedy at that local level. But I do think it's something that could have a good conversation in the future about is there a better way to do that? And I'm probably not the person to do that. I would bring along folks who are better adept to do that than myself.
Well, Representative, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman, maybe my comments are directed at you and any of our colleagues on corporations that might be listening, but I'm looking at that agenda and you're considering insurance, but it's through the issue of insurance fraud. And I think on the other side of that token is private insurance company can hold us hostage because they know that we're going to pay the bill. They know that we are constitutionally obligated to take care of these facilities. And why are our state facilities able to be held hostage by private insurance companies? So I think my direction to you, Mr. Chairman, is just I would like to see a more robust conversation about how we deal with this issue, maybe across the board. So
I think I appreciate that, Representative. I think we've hit on something that maybe all of us would like to know a little bit more about. And Mr. Farmer, I invite you to be involved in the conversation. I think the challenge for all of us is there something that we could do this better? I mean, could we do this thing better? The insurance piece is a big, big issue across the country. No question about it. My sister lives down in the eastern part of New Mexico, West Texas area, and none of those homeowners can get insurance. So that's gone altogether. And we know what's going on the West Coast. So this insurance piece is a big deal. And we've kind of hit on this thing. And I'm looking at the director. Let's give some thought to it. Let's see if maybe we can have another visit in the second meeting and come up with something by the third meeting that might be worth considering in the legislature. So thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's get any other public comment on routine and major maintenance. Anybody else in the room? Do we have somebody online who would like to testify?
Mr. Chairman, you sure do. I'm bringing in Trista and Tyler Jones. They're in one account, so it should just be one person joining us.
Krista and Tyler. Miss Jones, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Mr. Jones, yes, we sure can.
Awesome.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Welcome this afternoon.
Not really much to look at. So I apologize. We were zipping down with our little one to come sit in this, but we realized we were not going to make it. So we pulled over. So I appreciate your time. So I'm Tyler with 307 Roof Restore. I've been in roofing and fluid applied systems over 20 years. And I come from an asset management background. So working for JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, B of A. We've done stuff for the Army Corps of Engineers, NASA, so on and so forth. Not to bore you with all the technical sides of roofing, we have amazing sustainable solutions that we would love to educate the board about, and then also try to figure out how we get in to providing these systems.
Mr. Chairman, if I might interrupt for a second. Mr. Jones, if you have the stream or the Zoom opened up on another meeting, would you mind muting that?
Do I have a terrible echo?
Just a little bit.
I don't think it's open anywhere else. While we were driving, we were watching it on YouTube, but we closed that.
Okay.
So I apologize.
Guys pulling over and taking the opportunity to visit with us. Back to what your thoughts were, please continue.
So listening to the conversation, roofs are a huge ticket item. Being in the asset management, my job was to protect the assets and the money of our clients. With that being said, we personally have been watching the school districts use different systems that are traditionally $500,000 to $1 million more than what we have prescribed. We have 20, 30-year warranties, NDLs. We have products that'll do 5-inch hail resistance. We have products that are I-990, excuse me, ASTM and factory mutual wind uplift ratings. Those are the highest in the industry because it maxed out the fan at 1,000 miles an hour. So our biggest thing is we would love to sit down with the people to be making prescriptions or ideas of what needs to be happening on roofs to keep the cost down, to keep sustainability the main focus. Everything that we have can be warranted for the life of the building, and it would be on a case-to-case roof. However, most of the time, they're 10, 20, 30-year limited maintenance. Do you want to chime in? Sorry.
So anything, Trista, anything to add?
I think our big thing is we look forward to August to talk to you guys more on the design side. Maybe get us in front of more engineers, the facility director. I think that's been the biggest thing. And then for us also to understand and be educated in way of funds. So I understand that there's major maintenance, and if I hear that correctly, that comes from the school district itself. And then there's the capital projects that ultimately gets funds allocated from the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you've got a pretty good understanding. As you can tell, we spent almost the entire morning on this whole system. But yeah, all of these roofs generally fall into what we call the component project area of funding, which is essentially a piece of our major maintenance funding. But really appreciate you guys taking the time to weigh in. This is the appropriate place to do it and the appropriate topic. I will give an opportunity in August if we'd like to take this up a little bit, and then I would encourage whatever dialogue our folks could have with a Wyoming business like yours. So, committee, any questions of the Joneses? Anything? We'll be in touch.
Okay,
Thank you,
awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Again, apologies that we didn't make it down early this morning, but thank you for letting us to chime in for a quick minute. And I'll also do my due diligence and way of sharing with the districts individually. I'll continue to push the ball uphill with engineers, bless them.
Yeah.
And like I said, we look forward to getting some time with you guys actually in August.
Yeah, I've got one of those engineers who's a son of mine, and I know what you're talking about. So thank you again, you guys. Really appreciate it, and look forward to the dialogue ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Have a good
Best
day.
wishes to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashley, anybody else want to testify? Do we have anybody else waiting?
No, Mr. Chairman, not online.
Okay, we'll close public testimony, and on that last topic, I would just encourage the commission, the department to any dialogue you'd like to have there, and I would provide time in front of this committee in August. I'm intrigued by anything that would prolong the life of some of these entities that we talk about. If we can find a way to fit that, why not? I like the idea. So, Mr. Chairman, think about that with me, and I think there's an opportunity. Any final thoughts on routine and major maintenance? Okay, we're going to break for lunch. Let's go till how about 1:30? Okay,
Let's do that.
try to get back by 1:30 if we can, and thanks for the morning.
Rockets? Yeah, we could do that. Let's do it. Yeah. Well.